And I keep reminding people, I got addicted to a safe supply.
Yeah.
I got addicted to oxycodone. That was safe supply,
Right.
right? Pristine pharmaceutical grade oxycodone.
Right.
Got addicted to that, and I continued to buy it on the street. I was buying safe supply on the street,
Right.
pristine pharmaceutical opioids, right? So that whole notion to me is a bunch of BS because that's what began this whole crisis. People forget.
I'm Flindt Andersen, founder of Pain, Parents and Addicts in Need. I've been in recovery since 2001, and there isn't much I don't know about recovery. And my mission is to constantly tell the truth about addiction, to make the realities of addiction, recovery, and drug culture known, and to drive awareness and advocate change that ultimately saves lives.
And I'm Jason LaChance, a certified recovery coach with a passion for speaking with others and sharing their knowledge to help others seek recovery and maintain long-term sobriety. And this is the Don't Hide the Scars podcast, presented by Pain, Parents and Addicts in Need. Thank you for listening to the Don't Hide the Scars podcast. If this is your first time, please hit that subscribe button. And if you are getting value out of the podcast, please share with others, as we don't do any advertising in the podcast other than on our social media, Flindt.
Other than.
So you all help us continue to grow the podcast, and we're seeing a nice uptick in listenership. So a big thank you to you. Flindt Andersen, founder of Pain, myself, Jason LaChance. We are joined by our friend Tom Wolf, fighting the good fight in San Francisco and really all over the nation, but San Francisco for sure. Thanks for coming back on the podcast.
It's great to be back, guys. It's really great to see you. So I'm happy to be here.
Same here. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was good. We had about 15 people over to the house. It was really nice to host Thanksgiving for the first time in actually a really, really long time.
Right.
We've had, Christmas and everything here, but to have extended family come over and we cooked everything and the whole bit, it was pretty special.
Nice. Nice.
It was a good day. And the 49ers won, so I'm happy about
it. That's right. Well, you know what? And I can relate to that. This was my realization that the first time I at 45 years have ever hosted family in my home, and that's all a sign of my recovery. And it was like, wow, what a beautiful thing to experience.
It is. It's a gift. And I keep telling people recovery is a gift. And that, it's something that people that are out there struggling right now need to understand, that there are gifts waiting for them on the other side. They just have to be willing to let go of their fear.
Yeah.
The fear of withdrawal, the fear of facing their trauma, the fear of facing their problems, and embrace the idea of recovery, because there are truly gifts on the other side.
No doubt about it.
Amen to that.
And what I liked about ours is that I had that foot surgery, so they just planted my ass out in the backyard, with the next to a fire pit and a TV screen. All right, and I was happy as a clam out there. I didn't have to do anything. It was perfect, and my Packers won. So there we go.
Oh, everybody's happy then.
Everybody's happy. You bet.
What'd you guys do with Flindt? We just rolled them out.
Rolled them outside. That was it.
Oh, heck. Well, again, thanks for coming back on. I know we've talked about having you on more frequently because you're just, such a knowledgeable and passionate person. But a thing hit the news, and I was fired up about it. And Flindt and I both agreed, you're the person to talk to. We recently had Jinping from China come in, and I was seeing all over the news that, boy, they cleaned up the streets really quick. The homeless and the addicts, and let's get them off there and get out the spray and, make this beautiful. And our governor, who we just love, his comment was, well, when you have company come visit, you clean up.
Yep.
What a moron.
And it was so effing disheartening.
He left himself the quotes that he made about, it's true because it's true that we had to clean up. That quote's going to follow him around for a while. And the mayor of San Francisco standing behind him laughing is also going to follow her around for a while, because it just it looked disingenuous is what it looked like. And, there's so many things to kind of dig into here. There's a lot of misinformation that's floating around in social media about actually what happened to the homeless that were in San Francisco. They were like, oh, they moved them all to Oakland, or they housed them all, which proves we can house them. No, the truth is they just moved them up a few blocks into the Tenderloin and into the Van Ness corridor. and they cleared out Market Street and UN Plaza and the whole area down by 4th and Mission by the Metreon, and they put up fences. They put up fences all around downtown San Francisco, and they were ID checking everyone as they walked into those areas, to keep the homeless and to keep people that were struggling with addiction out of those areas. I mean, that's the only reason that I can think of. There was some pro-Palestine protests going on at the same time too, but it's just really interesting to me that in the most liberal city in the United States, that that hates Donald Trump here with a passion, right? And they hate the whole concept of building a wall and all that. That the first thing they did is they came in and they put up walls all over San Francisco. I mean, you have to understand the irony of that, right? Yeah. To keep out a subset of the population. Literally, it was to keep a subset of the population out of those areas, which is not equity, right? We talk about equity. There's no equity in that, and they basically segregated that population back up into the Tenderloin and out to the Van Ness corridor, where they waited it out for a week. That's basically what happened. They didn't, they may have housed or sheltered maybe 120 people out of 8,000 homeless. And then the rest of them, they just said, nope, you got to go. See you later. And moved them up a few blocks.
Wow. Unreal.
Unbelievable. I don't even know what to say, to be honest with you. I just, I don't know. Go, because I'm speechless at the moment.
I was watching Soylent Green the other night.
Ooh, wow.
Been a while for some of us, and I was like, God, this just reminds me of what is going on in San Francisco and LA. It has so many of those things, and it's just like, I'm laughing because if not, I'm going to get really angry.
Right.
Like, we're just we're going to put on a good front.
Yeah, that's what they did.
So when he left, did they take the fences down and everybody's back in the normal spot again?
Yeah. So the whole week of APEC. So it wasn't just President Z that was there. You had the president of the Philippines and the president of Vietnam, and you had the president of the United States. Nobody talks about the fact that POTUS was here too, right?
Right.
And so you had all these cops. You had an extra 150 CHP officers working in the city along with the cops, and a bunch of feds. And the cops were given unlimited overtime during the whole week. So you had cops working doubles and triples out there to create this police presence out on Market Street and South of Market area where all the events were taking place. And all of a sudden, like literally all of a sudden, the streets looked great. Yeah. They looked secure. They did come and spray them down and clean them up. But there was like 2 cops on every corner. And nobody was getting shoplifted.
Right.
There was nobody out there shooting dope on Market Street out in the open. There were no drug dealers out during the day. Now at night, we can talk about that because at night it kind of crept back in a little bit, but they still kind of kept it clear. But it was like a respite, and what that showed me is that with the political will and with the resources, they can improve street conditions while they are working on solving the issue of homelessness and drugs.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So, we know that we've got 8,000 homeless people in San Francisco that are struggling with addiction, that are actually sleeping rough on the street. They proved during APEC that they can move them out of certain areas, like the areas of commerce, where all the shopping is, where all the tourists go. They can move them out of there and keep those streets secure if they want to, but there's just no real desire to do so. And then they complain that, we don't have the resource to do it. Well, maybe, it wasn't a good idea to turn on the police 3 years ago like we did as a country.
Right.
Maybe it wasn't a good idea to divert funding and then give it back and then discourage recruitment and all those things. And now, San Francisco's down 700 police officers. Right. Maybe that wasn't a good idea because as it turns out, to improve street conditions, it requires an element of law enforcement. It just does.
You said that in the last podcast.
Of course. Nothing's changed. Nothing changed. If anything, it was made more evident by APEC that show that, when all these important folks come to town, all of a sudden the feds can show up in force and arrest a couple of hundred drug dealers, which is what they did.
Right.
It shows that all of a sudden the CHP is not that necessary out on the highways. You can bring them all into San Francisco. And it shows that, all of a sudden they do have the money to pay double and triple OT to cops to work, and they're raking in the dough. So the resources are actually there. The money's actually there. There's just no political will. And actually, not even in absence of that, there's just a desire to not fund the police fully without asking us taxpayers to pay even more out of our pocket to fund them, when that's a basic need that should already be part of your city's annual budget.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised top quality care with programs for detox and patient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living support groups, and more. New Perceptions North provides adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, in a safe, comfortable environment to begin the process of recovery to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction. Call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
It doubly proves, once again, we're in another situation where we have our governor, others, spouting a bunch of bullshit that they don't even believe. It just goes to prove they're like, no, this is the way it is. If it was really the way that it is and they see it that way, they would have left everything as is. They would have just left it as is. But they didn't. They come in and they do all of this, just proving just how much more full of shit, I don't know how else to say it, they are about the whole situation.
So look, the way I look at all of this is I look at criminal justice reform as a whole, as an experiment. It's an experiment on human beings and on society. And I think people like Governor Newsom would like things to work different. I think he would like the idea of community policing and social justice to actually work, right? The problem is that it doesn't work.
Right.
It's at least not working in the form that they have presented to the people. Okay. Right. Which is now forcing him to pivot, because whole entire cities are becoming destabilized because of crime, homelessness, and drugs. And so it's not just San Francisco, it's LA, 74,000 homeless in Los Angeles County. I was on Skid Row last month. It's as bad as ever. It's just completely out of control. Fresno, Sacramento. And so it's not just the big coastal cities, right? It's all in the cities inland too, and in the Central Valley in California. They're all struggling with the same thing. This kind of desire to move away from public safety, or to reimagine public safety. I think that's the term we hear a lot amongst the kind of radical leftists and criminal justice reformers. We want to reimagine public safety, but the way they've reimagined it turns out that it's nihilistic, that they just want to just basically disband the police and get rid of public safety and decriminalize everything. And then they have this weird utopian dream where everybody's just going to behave.
Right. Don't they understand that criminals are going to be criminals? Right? I mean, look, it's like, what's this company, the Drug Policy Alliance, right? That
Don't get me started on them, man.
Oh, Tom,
we're going to
because I started reading on these guys. I want to come to San Francisco. I want to confront these people face to face. I can't believe what they're talking about as far as changing policy for drug dealers. I mean, I am in shock over this one.
So the Drug Policy Alliance, just to give you a little background, they're a national organization that has a branch in San Francisco and in California. But they received a $50 million grant from the Soros Foundation. Right. That's how they operate. Okay. Right. $10 million a year for 5 years. And they're literally influencing national drug policy at a national level in Washington, D.C. So that's something that is not on people's radar, and it's something that's become a big focus of my advocacy as I've pivoted my advocacy to look at drug policy, because underneath homelessness and housing policy and all those things is this drug policy, this radical interpretation of harm reduction, this effort to decriminalize drug dealings, this effort to legalize drugs. And all of it's being driven by the Drug Policy Alliance and the National Harm Reduction Coalition. And so, my goal is to basically challenge them. That's it. I want to stand up and challenge them from the belly of the beast in San Francisco and just say, hey, wait a minute. I used to sleep on the street. I used to stick a needle in my neck. I know exactly what addiction does to a human being. And what you are proposing is going to completely destroy whatever semblance of public safety that we have left in this country. And on top of that, nobody's ever going to want to get clean because no one's ever going to challenge someone or give them a nudge or a push or intervene in a way that can guide someone towards recovery. So you're really just on your own. And if you're homeless and you're in a tent and you're smoking fentanyl every 2 hours, that aha moment doesn't really come for people in that situation. You have to be faced with a choice many times, right? Oh, you're going to go to jail, or we're going to hold you accountable in this way. You need to make a choice, and then they make a choice. But if we take away those choices and just say, hey, body autonomy, do what you want, we're going to make it easier for you to use drugs. No one's ever going to make that choice, and you're going to see the amount of people struggling with addiction explode. And we all know what happens when you become an addict, especially to meth and to opioids and opiates, etc. You spiral. Your life spirals out of control, and oftentimes leads to homelessness, or as they say in the big book, jails, institutions, or death.
Absolutely.
We've removed the jails, so all that's left are a few institutions and death.
Right.
That's kind of what we're facing now, and it's unbelievable that that they've gained so much influence in drug policy in this country, and it takes folks like us to stand up to them and say, no, this is wrong. We need to place the focus back on recovery, back on treatment, and remind people that accountability is a cornerstone of recovery.
Yeah. It's look, I'm just going to give my view on this. It's like people supporting terrorists. When I watch this stuff, when I listen to it, and the majority of these, you're always going to get the people that are pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, whatever you want to call it, because they're just evil, right? But you also have a massive amount of people out there, and specifically younger people, that they never get all of their facts. They just don't. They pick out one saying here, one saying there. It looks good. It feels good, blah, blah, blah. And then they go balls to the wall in support of something. Mm-hmm. And again, my opinion, you support Hamas, you're supporting Nazism. I mean, to me, there is no difference here. Okay.
Look, when you get your news from TikTok, man, it's not going to have very good results.
Right.
That's what I was thinking. Well, they got lots of good reels there, Flindt.
Right. But my point here is it's sort of like people that are, quote, advocates in what we do. They'll see somebody like Drug Policy Alliance, they'll get bits and pieces out of them and go, oh, that looks good. And then they get back and support them. But they're not knowing the reality of truly what's going on. I think if the majority of these people knew truly what was going on, they might have somewhat of a change of mind here, or change of heart. I mean, because people just can't be that ignorant, or can they?
Well, that's a great question, because nobody knows about drug policy. Nobody has any idea of the whole concept of harm reduction and how it's applied within our laws in this country right now, around open air drug use and open air drug dealing. The Drug Policy Alliance a couple of years ago wrote an article. It's still out there on the internet, called "Rethinking the Drug Dealer," and they basically said that drug dealers were the first line of defense in harm reduction and are actually a friend to the drug addict.
Holy shit!
User, because they're the ones that know their supply, and they're actually talking to them about their supplies to help the drug user use more safely. And then that dealer then becomes a dependable source of drugs for the user. And so they are actually the first line of defense in drug dealing.
What was the article called again?
Rethinking the Drug Dealer. Just Google it. You'll see it. It's there. It'll blow your mind, man, when you read it.
That's a big WTF. What the?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, this is who we're up against, right? And they're winning. They're winning. I'll be honest. They're winning the battle because they've got the money. They've held the narrative around policy for a really long time. It's starting to change. We're pushing back, and it's not just like people on the right politically that are pushing back. It's people from the center
Right.
that are pushing back because they're watching their cities disintegrate, like become destabilized, right? They're tired of people breaking into their cars. They're tired of people breaking into their garages and stealing their bikes. They're tired of people on the street don't even ask for money anymore. They don't even ask for change. You know that? You walk around Market Street, you go up into the Tenderloin. There's nobody out there panhandling. Let me, hey man, you got $1? Nobody's asking for that anymore because they all got theirs. They've got their hustle. It's really interesting. If you think about it, if you go out there and you'll see a guy standing there by the freeway holding a sign asking for money. Well, he's going to go buy meth with that money, right? But when you go into the Tenderloin now, it's so inundated with drugs, and drugs are so cheap, and there's so many services, and they get so much money from general assistance, from welfare, that people aren't even asking for money anymore. They got it covered between that and the hustling, the shoplifting, and the other hustles that you have out there on the street. They got it covered. It's crazy. Like, it's unbelievable. And this isn't just San Francisco. This is happening. I promise you, this is happening in Sacramento. It's happening in Fresno. It's happening in LA and in San Diego too, across the state. And you hear the governor virtue signal about doing a few different things, like holding fentanyl traffickers accountable. He just introduced something today where he wants to make tranq a Scheduled 1 narcotic, but still make it available to veterinarians for horses, because tranq is a horse tranquilizer mixed with fentanyl. Right? You hear those things, those virtue signaling moments from the governor saying, oh, well, yeah, he's really interested maybe in tackling the crisis. But he's not really interested in tackling the crisis, I don't think, in the way that it needs to be tackled, because that would require a move back towards policing, a move back towards a reinvestment in public safety, and a move away from this narrative, this harm reduction narrative of we should just make it safer and easier for people to use drugs. And then when they're ready, and when they come to us and they're ready, we'll usher them into treatment. Well, guess what? There's no treatment.
There's no treatment. I keep going back since the last time we talked. I keep going back to your statement about whatever it was, the $569 million budget that San Francisco has for this. And there's 57 beds to serve 8,000 practicing drug addicts. Again, where's the money going? Right. I mean,
it goes to syringe. It goes to syringe access programs.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Right. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, all of this stuff. So what do you? I mean, how do we tackle organizations like this? How do we get in front of them? How do we spark debate with them, and in a forum that's actually going to get people to show up and listen to?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Like, I'm a pragmatic guy. I'm a middle of the road guy. I don't really want to have a debate with them at this point. I just want to challenge them completely and challenge their entire narrative.
Fair enough.
Everything that you guys are saying is wrong.
Right.
It's doing tremendous damage. There are aspects of harm reduction that we can utilize, but your nihilistic view of you just want to legalize drugs for everybody is detrimental to the health and well-being of the United States of America. That's kind of how I feel. That's really my personal view on it. Do I understand it has to be more pragmatic than that? Absolutely. And will it require some debate down the road? Probably. But I think it's important that we support national organizations that are willing to stand up to the Drug Policy Alliance, which is really a Goliath. It's really a Goliath out there. They're well-funded. So you need to support orgs that support recovery that are on the national level. There's I'm associated now with this national organization called the Foundation for Drug Policy Solutions. They're a group we're basically like moderates in the drug policy world. You've got General Barry McCaffrey, who's the former drug czar under Bill Clinton. You've got Dr. Kevin Sabet, who's really big on regulating legalized marijuana. You've got former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, who's in recovery from addiction and alcoholism. We're all part of this group where we're trying to rise up kind of from the center and acknowledge that there are aspects of harm reduction that can be useful, like Narcan, like medically assisted treatment for fentanyl, Suboxone, maybe short-term methadone use as part of that as well. But really the focus has to be on creating climates of recovery in your communities. Climates of recovery. That means deep investment in drug treatment, deep investment in recruiting people to work in this field because there's a shortage of people that want to work in the field of drugs and homelessness. And changing the policy little by little. And, it can start at your local level in your own city and work its way up, or it can start at the state level. I'm trying to do both. I've been to Sacramento multiple times to argue for different bills around increasing accountability and penalties for fentanyl dealers and traffickers. And, it looks like now maybe we're going to take a ballot to a measure to the ballot to increase penalties on fentanyl dealers. I'm part of that.
All right.
So these are the things that you have to do. And while at the same time, don't be afraid to go to Washington, D.C. One of the big highlights of my year this year was in April. I got to go to Washington, D.C. and I held with that foundation, and we held a congressional briefing.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. I got to stand up there and tell my story and talk about the fentanyl crisis in San Francisco in a congressional briefing.
Right.
Like that was like in the building where the big Capitol and everything with the congressmen and all that stuff. And that was huge.
Yep.
Because they were interested. They were interested in listening, and it wasn't just Republicans. Mm-hmm. It was Democrats too, because they know that back home in their communities, there are entire portions of their communities that are being ravaged by fentanyl right now.
Right.
And giving out foil, pipes, and straws to them is really not a long-term solution to address this crisis.
Do you think a lot of it too, jumping back a bit, it dawned on me that there's a lot of fear that if they just went, hey, we're wrong, we got to shift directions?
Well, they would never do that because they don't ever believe that they're wrong. This is the thing, right? When I said earlier, it's like, I don't even know if I want to debate them, because you could, it's kind of like the pro-Palestine protesters, right? Okay, they believe in this message so much that Hamas could nuke Tel Aviv tomorrow, and they would still say that Hamas and Palestine were right.
Right.
There's no arguing. There's no changing their mind. There's nothing heinous enough that can happen that would change their mind and what they believe. In fact, as more people continue to die from drug overdose, they would just double down.
Right.
So this is even more proof that we need to really legalize and regulate all this stuff and have safe supply and all that stuff. And I keep reminding people, I got addicted to a safe supply.
Yeah.
I got addicted to oxycodone. That was safe supply.
Right.
Right. Pristine pharmaceutical grade oxycodone.
Right.
Got addicted to that. And I continued to buy it on the street. I was buying safe supply on the street. Right. Pristine pharmaceutical opioids. Right. So that whole notion to me is a bunch of BS, because that's what began this whole crisis. People forget.
Not only do they forget, but they don't understand what, again, I'm going to go back to this 1,000 times. They don't understand what addiction is. They don't understand all of what we know all too well. They don't get it. And by the way, most people never will get it. But somehow we've got to get that across to these people that are actually casting their vote.
Yeah, it's true. That's where people like us come in, trying to raise awareness and educate. Education, drug education isn't teaching people how to use drugs safely. Drug education is teaching people about the drugs that are out there and what they can do to you, and the illicit drugs that are out there and what they can do to you. And that's why it's really important to talk to kids, go to schools, talk to parents, and make them understand what these drugs are. Make them understand that 8 out of 10 street drugs right now contain fentanyl. And so when you're at a party and some people bust out some coke and they're chopping up lines on the kitchen counter, when you decide to go snort a line, there's an 80% chance that there's fentanyl. Like they need to those are the things that we need to raise awareness on and make people understand, and make people also understand that fentanyl has really changed the game.
Oh, it has changed the game. Unbelievably changed the game.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, at 559-579-1551, or visit us online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Pain Nonprofit. And please subscribe to the Don't Hide the Scars podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. And if you would like to donate to PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, Please click the link in the description to make your tax-deductible donation today and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
Everything you said is absolutely 100% correct, right? But how? Again, we've both been at this a long time. How in the world do these schools not allow people to come in and tell that real story about it? I don't know what it's like in the Bay Area, but down here, sure, they will let law enforcement come in and talk about it. They almost don't have a choice. They're going to have to allow law enforcement to come in. But for recovering addicts to come in to tell and I'm not talking about people with 6 months of sobriety or a year of sobriety. I'm talking about people with long-term sobriety that have been with long-term addiction that was attached to it, that have somehow wound up okay through all of it, to come in and tell their story. The schools do not allow that here. And so this is so much bigger. And I guess the only way I can put it is somehow we have to be able to get it across to these organizations, whether it's a school district, no matter what it is, that if you don't allow us to come in, there's no way that you're going to be able to get any help in this. These kids have to understand, these parents have to understand what this truly is.
Right. And you're starting to see some cracks form in that there's people like, I don't know if you know who Laura and Chris Didier are. They're out of the Sacramento area. They're parents who lost their child to a fentanyl poisoning. Okay. Their child purchased what he thought was Xanax off of Snapchat. It turns out it was a fentanyl pill. He took it and he died of overdose in his bed. And they've become very active in the movement to increase penalties for fentanyl dealers in California and throughout the country. And they've been starting, Laura Didier in particular has been starting to travel around schools in the Sacramento area. They've allowed that to happen. Okay. Where she goes in and she tells her story to them and the loss and the pain that she experienced from losing her son to a fentanyl poisoning. So there's some hope. There's some glimmers of hope there. But you guys are right in that there's a philosophical divide. Okay. So having, let's say, me walking into an elementary school here might be a problem for some people because I'm pro recovery, and right. They are, the teachers or maybe the administrators support more harm reduction measures, right? So maybe they're not going to be completely comfortable. But at the same time, I've spoken. I spoke at a couple of Catholic schools here on the peninsula and in San Francisco, and they did. The administrator told me, she goes, we want to try to keep it kind of a harm reduction focus, but we really think your story is valid, and we want you to share your story. And so there's a way to thread the needle on that to incorporate aspects of the harm reduction where it can help. Buprenorphine, Suboxone, Narcan. Clean needles so you stop the spread of HIV. Those are like acceptable things that you can talk about, right, to incorporate some of the harm reduction. But by the end of that conversation, the entire conversation was focused on recovery from addiction. Yeah. And on the detriments of addiction, and then recovery and how it is possible. And there's a lot of kids that were in those rooms that I spoke to whose parents are alcoholics or drug addicts. Right. There's one girl that came up to me and said, my mom is homeless in the Tenderloin right now. Jeez. And this is at a good school, and the dad's doing it all, so it really resonated with her. So I'm just saying, you never know who that message is going to reach. There's a lot of assumptions that because of what school or social demographic, or how much money you make, that addiction isn't prevalent in your community or your family. That's a bunch of BS. We know that addiction doesn't discriminate. Right. So, you'd be surprised how many people that were affluent have come up to me or reached out to me and said, oh man, my daughter or my son is out there on the street and I don't know how to get him out of this mess that they're in. And they're loaded. They live in Seacliff in San Francisco, like that. Right.
Tom, 93% of our clientele went to an upper end high school here in Fresno.
Sure.
93%, because we keep track of where these kids all went to high school, so I almost think in most places it's the higher upper end families with income, that this has affected. And again, preaching this for the last 15 years, and it's like we're in the same spot we were 15 years ago, 12 years ago. I mean, some of it has gotten a little better. The awareness piece definitely has. I mean, how does anyone in the United States today not aware about fentanyl? I mean, you got to be living on Mars, if you haven't heard about it. But yet it is. Again, I posted something the other day just because it pissed me off. Here we have the war in the Middle East, which I understand, but I haven't heard shit, okay, from any other advocate out there, not in our area, talking about fentanyl, talking about treatment, talking about even long-term harm reduction. Yep. It's like it just kind of floats away, floats away, and then it comes back, floats away, then it comes back, instead of it being hit hard. This is the number one killer in the United States today. Why aren't we talking about this every day?
Agreed. I couldn't agree with you more. I posted a tweet a couple of weeks ago that ended up being kind of controversial, which is good. I like controversy sometimes.
You bet.
Where, they were, I said, you have all these social justice warriors protesting this genocide, this supposed genocide, quote unquote, that's happening in Palestine. What about the genocide happening in the United States?
Right.
110,000 a year dying from drug overdose. What about the fact that more people die in the age group of age 18 to 45 from overdose than anything else? Why is it that overdose is killing more people than car accidents and gun violence combined? Where are the rallies in the streets for that? They rally, and the thing that kills me, I just have to say it this way, is that the same people that are advocating for decriminalization and legalization and harm reduction of drugs would more than happily repeal the Second Amendment and bring prohibition to guns in this country, despite the fact that drug overdose is killing far more people than gun violence is killing in this country. So it just doesn't make any sense. The logic that they apply to drugs is the exact opposite logic to guns, even though drugs are killing way more people in this country than guns are. So it's really important to point that out. And that's not a Republican thing or Democrat. That's just a common sense, logical way of looking at something. Is that how can these same groups of people go out there and say, we need to decriminalize drug use and drug possession and drug dealing, and and eventually we want to legalize it, and we should have consumption rooms for everyone to shoot dope all day, all that stuff, and they turn around and they say, I would vote yes to repeal the Second Amendment and ban guns and bring prohibition. It's like they're against. We hate prohibition of drugs, but we love prohibition of guns.
Right.
Even drugs are killing way more people. Yeah. So death is the ultimate statistic to me. It's final. It's finite. Like that's it. There's nothing else beyond that. You're death. Right. So if we just want to go off of that piece of data, we are absolutely failing as a country to respond. And the policies that we're implementing are completely backwards because deaths have only increased since we began the whole decriminalization model in 2015 in California.
Right. Yeah. Well, and what is the statistic? It's something like 2 747s full a day crashing over the course of a year. That's what our rate is. And if that happened, we would be up in arms. What's wrong with the travel? This is not safe. This is dangerous. This is terrible. Oh, and it's like, my goodness, people, I'm just amazed at the inability, like we were just saying there. I mean, people, you're giving individuals the loaded gun that they can aim at themselves every day. They're playing Russian roulette.
So they're handing out, you go down the street, there's people pulling a red wagon down in the Tenderloin in San Francisco right now, handing out hygiene kits is what they call them. And, they've got baby wipes, condoms, but they also have a clean rig, a glass pipe, a crack pipe or a meth pipe. And then it has, a cooker, tourniquet, cotton balls, all the stuff that you need to mix up a shot of whatever it is you're going to mix up and stick it in your body or smoke it up. Foil and straws too. Those are all included in your hygiene kit. They're giving all that out right now. And it's almost kind of like saying, well, here's your free gun. Here you go.
Yeah.
just go up there to the corner to those drug dealers over there, and you can buy your bullets for $5.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have enough to buy one bullet. So they stick their one bullet in their revolver and they close it and they spin it around and put it to their head and pull the trigger.
That's exactly it.
It's exactly what's happening right now. And it drives me nuts that people don't want to look at it that way. And if you do say that, then you're a Republican or you're a right winger or you're a fascist. I hear it all in San Francisco. You know, here I am still a moderate Democrat and I'm still being called a fascist on the daily in San Francisco for calling out some of this madness that's happening on our streets, all because I experienced it personally. I've got the scars on my arms to prove it, you know, and try to tell people that, no, this is not the way. And they're too interested in listening to the kind of purple-haired activists that want to talk about, you know, there was a rally at City Hall recently. Hold on a second, my battery's dying. I'm going to plug in my charger. It was a rally at City Hall recently about overdose deaths, right? And you had Dean Preston, who's a Democratic socialist on our board of supervisors in the city, like our city council. He was leading the rally. And so it was all like the harm reduction folks that were out there on the steps. And one guy had a sign that he was holding up, all very proudly and happily saying, downtown is for drug users.
Jesus.
Yeah.
While the supervisor, an elected official standing there giving the speech to dudes holding a sign next to him smiling, downtown is for drug users.
No
and I'm just like, this is where this radical harm reduction has led us to in San Francisco, is that now there are people openly advocating to basically surrender our downtown.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Tom, is there any way you could get a hold of one of those, what did you call them? Those kits?
A hygiene kit?
The hygiene kit. Is there any way you can get a hold of one of those and send it down to us?
Yeah, I'll try. Sure.
Okay. I'd appreciate it. I want to,
Yeah.
because I don't think that's hit Fresno yet, but it sure wouldn't surprise me if it does. But this is something that I would like to, I'd like to see it, because I want to talk to some people about this, hopefully, so we don't get to that point.
And what's important to understand is that those hygiene kits are embedded in what they call syringe access programs. So in San Francisco, they spend about $36 million every 3 years on various syringe access programs in the city. And embedded within those programs are foil, pipes, and straws. So when you're signing off on the syringe access program, or when like a concerned citizen or a voter sees or reads it in the paper about, oh, these syringe access programs, you're thinking, oh, that's good. We're going to stop the spread of HIV and hepatitis C. What they don't tell you is that funding also funds foil, pipes, straw, and all the other things that go with it. And regardless of how you feel about needles, foil, pipes, and straws is enabling. There's no harm reduction element there. There's not. There is none.
None.
Yeah.
When I was on the street, I had to hustle $3 for a pipe and 50 cents for a piece of foil and a straw from the liquor store, because they would sell them. You know, I had to hustle to get that. And now you don't have to anymore. So I guess the harm reduction is that the user gets to keep $3.50 in their pocket, and that you've almost got enough to buy some Fent right there.
See, and this, and again, I'm sorry, but this is the stuff that needs to be talked about to those quote harm reduction people, advocates, whatever you want to call them, that don't know the truth about it. They're only seeing a small piece of the harm reduction.
Yeah.
A lot of these people that promote it, they don't even have an idea this is going on. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
At least up here.
Or hit a headline and it's easily, as Tom, you're talking about. I mean, you're left moderate. I'm like really in the middle, and Flint's right moderate, I would say. And, you know, it's like, this isn't a political thing. This is people's lives. Like off what you said, the 36 million, I did some quick math based on the idea. If you had to maybe fund for a private treatment, say $30,000 a month, that's 400,000 months you could provide treatment for that $36 million.
I was just going to say, thank you. That's great info. But I was also going to say this, they spent $36 million in 3 years, right? It takes at least 2 years for a established treatment facility to apply for, go through the ringers, jump through the hoops to obtain the licensing for Medi-Cal in a particular county in the state of California. Takes 2 years, and then you're not even guaranteed it. And it's obscene to me.
How about if you're a service provider in San Francisco that wants to open a drug treatment facility? Let's say you're a 501c3 and you want to open a drug treatment facility. You have to wait 5 years before you can apply to do a contract with the city. You have to be in existence for 5 years first.
Why would a private, you're talking about a 501c3. You're not talking about private. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
private's different. That's different. As long as you're licensed, then you have to be licensed under the rules of the state of California, which we get all that, right? But I'm just saying, like, if you were a nonprofit and you wanted to open up a drug rehab, and kind of like a Salvation Army style type of thing, you'd have to wait 5 whole years before you could apply for any RFP with the city, any contract.
Do they have a reason behind that?
I'm not sure if it's because they want to make sure they're legit, or I'm not sure, but it's just interesting that they put those requirements on the front end, and then they have no auditing of any of the hundreds of millions of dollars that they spend on the existing nonprofits on the back end.
Right.
They had to have a meeting yesterday, a hearing at the Board of Supervisors here yesterday, because one of the best supervisors on that board is Catherine Stefani. She's great. She actually called a hearing because she wants to have an investigation done into the auditing of nonprofits in San Francisco that have contracts with the city across the board. And the city spends $360 million a year on different nonprofit contracts, like across the board, just for homelessness. Right. That doesn't count for like trash pickup or education program. It doesn't count for all that. That's just for homeless services, just for 1-year contracts. And 110 million of that goes to just one nonprofit in San Francisco. So there's a monopoly on drug treatment in the city, and so it's really just one guy doing one org doing all the treatment. Everybody else got pushed out to the edges, and we're trying to change that. We're trying to reintegrate some of these smaller service providers back into the mix so that there's more options for people when they want to seek treatment. We're trying to create a treatment on demand system in San Francisco. Like when I say we, I mean me and my friend Steve Adami. There's a recovery working group. We're working hard, and we have different service providers attached to that. We're trying to string together this whole continuum of care that's going to run almost like as an alternative to the existing model that's in San Francisco, to say, hey, we're going to do this continuum of care. We're going to focus it on recovery. We're going to have the harm reduction elements that are required in there, but really the focus is that when you're done, you're living a drug-free life. That's our goal. And that's what we're trying to push here. And it's picking up traction, man.
Good.
And it's picking up traction because we're going to lose 800 people to drug overdose this year in San Francisco.
Right.
100. We're going to set a new record for ODs in the city. Tiny little city. Did you know San Francisco, we have 4 times as many overdose deaths per capita than anywhere else in California?
No. I believe it. Yeah. I mean, I do.
So when I say we're the epicenter of the opioid crisis in the Western United States, if not the entire United States, that's why.
Sure.
We lose more people per capita in this city than anywhere else except for maybe Philadelphia. That's it.
Right.
Because of Kensington, right? So yeah, the crisis is bad. And you're right. We have 57 detox beds in the whole city. We have 500 treatment beds split between residential treatment and step-down housing. So it's not even really 500 drug treatment beds. It's about 250 drug treatment beds and another 250 or so step-down housing beds after treatment. So you have somewhere to go live. And you have 22,000 drug users in San Francisco.
Right. And here I just thought of this. This brings up something else too. And there's people out there that, I hope this makes sense, that are getting pissed off at private treatment centers, and they're going, all these private treatment centers, they're just making so much money, and they're making this and they're making that. Okay, well, look, some are, okay? Most of us are kind of in the middle, right? Some of us are just below that. But when there's not enough treatment centers that come from our counties and from our cities and governmental aid, well, of course the private treatment center is going to make more money.
Right.
Again, I go back to that whole thing of why does it take so long? There are private treatment centers that will come in and want to take the Medi-Cal issue on. By the way, the Medi-Cal issue is a pain in the ass. Okay, to take on. It's huge. But again, it takes 2 years while there is a treatment center, maybe one or two in that particular county that is so backed up they can't even get people in.
Right. And the Medi-Cal issue is, it doesn't come without its pitfalls using Medi-Cal.
You bet.
Okay. So first of all, it's 30, 60, or 90-day coverage. I guess they're extending that now to maybe 6 months. They used to have a limit on how many times you could use it for treatment. I guess they've taken that away, which is good. But at least in San Francisco, from what I've seen, and this is just my opinion, is that we have one primary addiction treatment provider that does mostly Medi-Cal billing. And then we have a few moderate sized ones that do depend on private funding for their treatment, right? But the one that accepts the Medi-Cal billing has gotten so big, like $400 million a year budget big, like that it seems like they're more interested in the money part than they are in servicing the need. And so that's the pitfall, right? I know they do some good work. I know they have good people working for them. I know that they want to help people, but I also know they like that money. And so I don't know.
Yeah, but you also have to understand this, that the Medi-Cal, their requirements are so stringent. Their policies, their procedures that a treatment center has to follow. Again, I'm not justifying,
Sure.
the greed that's over there, because it is out there. But it's so stringent on what you have to do. And it's simply like this as well. And I can use my treatment center as an example. With private insurance, do you know that that most of us, if we've billed somebody in last March, we just got paid for that client?
That's rough.
That's a fact, right? That's a fact. The majority, 95% of the policies out there, because it's not everyone, but I'd say 90% of the policies out there, once you bill, it's a minimum of 4 months before you see your money. So how are they expecting anybody to grow, again, love what they do? It's because now you're so worried about keeping your business open that, yeah, there's treatment centers out there that are going to pull somebody out of their treatment center to bring somebody else in. And that's just the nature of the beast. And again, not every treatment center does that. But my God, when it takes minimum 4 months to receive your money from an insurance company, that along with that are cutting down the number of days that our clients can actually stay. Now we're seeing 17 to 22 days instead of 28 full days, depending on the policy. It's so there's both sides to this treatment financial piece. I guess that's the best way, for me to put it.
But the result is that as a result of the clandestine billing practices, the state's clandestine rules around who qualifies for treatment, how to qualify with Medi-Cal, your income, insurance companies and the hoops they make you jump through, nonprofits in their ability to raise money. Then you factor in philosophy. Is it faith-based? Is it not faith-based?
Yep.
Is it harm reduction? Is it abstinence only? How can we integrate those things? While we're all sitting there kind of stuck in our own spaces, there's this huge gap that's developed, not just with the funding, but with this desire to work together. Even I said it earlier, I almost feel bad for saying it about the Drug Policy Alliance, because I know at the end of the day, everybody in this business of drugs and addiction and recovery and homelessness, everybody wants one basic thing. They want to save lives. I know that. There's nobody here, even the most radical leftist folks that I don't like or whatever, everyone wants to save lives. Like there's this baseline that we all agree on. It's just that when we start to go up the ladder of how to get there, it diverges and it goes into all these different directions. And it's trying to find a way to build that bridge between all of them is super challenging because everyone's dug in to their beliefs, into their philosophies. Some organizations are dependent on this person continuing to fund them or this foundation continuing to fund them. This organization is dependent on Medi-Cal billing over here to stay in business, and it's just a mess. The whole thing's a mess, which is why I've advocated, along with Michael Schellenberger when he wrote San Francisco. We talked about having an actual statewide addiction treatment system that is put in place that's not funded and run necessarily by the state, but have an oversight of all of the treatment that's out there to try to bring everyone together sort of kind of under one umbrella. And then it becomes easier for the state to direct money to this one umbrella that then comes down across everything. That might work better at this point. Like if you're going to socialize any kind of medicine, addiction treatment might be, and mental health treatment might be the ones to do it, just because the crisis is so out of control. It's so hard to get someone into a mental health facility. It's so hard to get someone to get Medicare to pay for any kind of mental health of any kind. And oftentimes that's combined with drugs, the drug use, drug addiction.
Yeah, it is.
So to figure all that out, it's this huge mess. It takes sometimes months and years to jump through to get someone that has schizophrenia that also uses meth into an actual treatment facility that will take them, right? Because they're dual diagnosis, right?
Right.
Those kinds of things. So, at this point, maybe that's where maybe the government can help us is in that area of medicine, because the struggle has become so big and it's so out of control. And there's such a huge addiction and mental health crisis amongst the homeless population that we see out there, that if we don't want to use jails as the infrastructure that we used to use in the past, then we need to start thinking about building another infrastructure. And so, you have a state system that ran all the jails. Why can't you have a state system that runs all the addiction and mental health treatment? And maybe pivot to build a whole new infrastructure. And I'm just spitballing here, but I'm trying to think bigger picture, because otherwise we're all going to be continuing to spin our wheels down here at the ground level, trying to save lives with limited resources while fighting each other over philosophy, instead of trying to find bigger solutions that can bring real help and treatment and recovery to the masses. That's what I would like to see.
Right. And you said so much right there. I mean, which again, I appreciate you saying that, but I discovered this seriously 14 years ago when I started this thing. And some folks around here, we put together this little sub-organization that was called the Lock It Up Project, in order to lock up medicines in your medicine cabinets. And it worked pretty well. Even had some home builders that actually went and were putting locked medicine cabinets in their new homes that they were building. And it was again, just a little something that was happening. But here's what I learned early on. And in a town like Fresno and this area, nobody wanted to work together. My thought going in was, let's bring in this group, let's bring in this group, let's bring in this group, this group, this group, and the county and the city and all of this stuff, just like you're talking about. Okay. And again, I'm not trying to one up anybody here, but I did this 14 years ago and said, come on, let's do this thing. Okay. It blew up faster than a balloon with too much helium in it.
Oh man.
Because people, the bottom line was people, well, you know what, they may take my client. I don't want them to take this client. Blah, 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 on just the petty little bullshit. Okay. And something, it continues to this day here. Yeah. It continues to this day. And you're right. If somehow we could get that right group of people and organizations together, I think we can make a hell of a difference.
When you think about how much money the state spends, Newsom introduced some grant stuff today, $300 million in grants to all these different counties to help fight homelessness. And he actually said in an interview that, we actually haven't given that much money to this issue in the past. And I'm like, he's given $17.5 million in the last 5 years to homelessness in California. That's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
So So even if he took, like, let's say you had a pool of $20 billion, right? That the state, because they have that kind of money, right?
Right.
And they decided that they were going to take 5 billion or 10 billion of that and devote it all to developing, creating drug treatment, climates of recovery, mental health treatment. We could do more just with that in 5 years than probably we've done in the last 30.
Absolutely.
And it's not hard, and you can have a committee and all that, but at the end of the day, you have one oversight that's going to make some harder decisions. Now, there'll probably be some battles about who's in charge of that oversight, but, right? The radical harm reduction folks, and then you got the other, but if they did it kind of like a 3-man panel, maybe oversighting it, that has reasonable representation from, lived experience to a doctor to someone who's an MSW, that could all kind of come together and try to find some solutions and then kind of filter it down. That might help, that might help recruit social workers, recruit psychiatrists, recruit drug counselors, recruit case managers, and maybe be able to pay them a little better than what we pay them now, because that's part of the problem too, is there's not enough people who want to do it. So what I'm basically suggesting is a complete reboot.
You know why that's not probably going to happen? As much as I want it to happen, here comes my right conservative side.
All right.
Let's hear it.
Fire off.
Here it comes. All right. These people do not know how to run businesses.
Yeah, well, okay, that's true.
When you're talking about the private sector versus government or state or anything else, the private sector, I'm sorry. You know what? I'll say a lot of us know how to run a business, and we know what it takes for that business to succeed. And a lot of times it means taking chances, not being afraid to fail, going after it, knowing who's in charge, because you always have to have the one person that finally says yes or no. You cannot have a committee. Committees are what? It's like when we're using in that committee we've got going on in our head. You have to have the one person that says yay or nay on the final decision making. And again, that's why I've said over the years, why won't government agencies, county agencies, allow the private sector to come in to help them with this? We know how to run the business end. We know how to run the treatment end. So why not bring us in? Because again, without being arrogant, we've been successful at it.
Right. I think it's because the state has, I don't want to say unlimited resources, but there's less the whole point here is there's no accountability, right? There's less accountability. So if they screw up and they squander $50 million grant, no one's really going to say anything because it's the state that did it, or somebody who contracted the state did it. That's part of the problem. So we have to bring back accountability in our governance. I get it. And I'm also concerned about philosophy and ideology, with the rise of the kind of radical left in this area, versus kind of people that are trying to be more centrist about this. We're kind of losing that battle, even though we're pushing back. So I don't know. I'm concerned, but I have to try. I think the point is that we need to try to think bigger about solutions to this crisis, to homelessness too, and housing and all that stuff. I sent a tweet out today saying, last year in California, we had a $90 billion budget surplus. Instead of the governor building housing and ending homelessness, which he could have pretty much done with that, he sent us gas rebate cards. And I'm just laughing because I have a hybrid, so it didn't really apply that much to me. I was nice to get the money, just in time for Christmas, but it didn't. I'm just like, and then they're lamenting about how there's no housing. I mean, right. I don't get it. And it just seems to me that our current leadership in Sacramento, some of them are good. A lot of them are just there to virtue signal. A lot of them have never had a regular job.
Right.
They went to college, they got maybe a Juris Doctorate to become a lawyer, and then they got a job as a community organizer, which is not a job.
Right.
Yeah.
Or union organizer, which is not a job.
Right.
And they got elected, and they've been a politician all this time. And so do they have an understanding of what it's like to work in a store, even in a store, even at Home Depot, right?
Right.
Ringing people up, do they? I don't think so. So I just, let alone run a business. So I'm concerned. I have concerns about that.
I got to tell you guys this one thing. I remember years ago I was in the produce business. You knew that.
Yeah.
And we were importing Turkish apricots. All right, dried apricots from Turkey. And I had a boss who was just a hard ass. And I learned so much from him just in this one little thing, because I made a $500,000 mistake. Oh yeah, on a few loads that were coming in from Turkey into New York, then out to California. And he walked into my office. He stood in the doorway. He was only about 5'7", but he had this beard and he was intimidating because he never smiled. And he looked at me and he simply said this: "Don't ever fucking let it happen again." And he turned around and he walked out. And it told me two things. Here's a boss with some empathy, knowing I made a mistake. I was young in what I was doing, but also setting that tone of, you make that mistake again, buddy, you're gone. And maybe I should have been gone then. And what my point is, that's the problem, I think, with the government. Okay. Nobody's held accountable. Like you said, they make a mistake. It's, oh, well, all right. Because they're afraid of firing somebody for even making a mistake.
And there's no one to replace them. Look, there's no Republicans to speak of in California and Sacramento in elected office, right? There's like 8. I know some of them. They're nice folks, but there's just not that many of them. Let's be real, right? So what you have is a supermajority of Democrats, which is fine, but then you have a supermajority of progressives within that Democratic supermajority. So that even the moderate Democrats that are on the outliers, they're the outliers. They don't get the committee assignments and all those things. And if they go against the grain, they get kicked off of whatever committee and get banished, right? That's the downside about one party rule. Which is really why I would like to see a rise from the middle. So this is what I challenge you, Jason. You said something earlier that really resonated with me. It's like you said that I was left of center, you're center, and you're right of center. Well, I think it's time that all of us that are around the center, that we all band together.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree with that.
And build a coalition and push the extremes away. Because 4 years ago it was this extreme right and the Proud Boy thing. Now it's this extreme radical left stuff with the whole college campuses and everything that's happening. I mean, it's madness. I have 2 teenage kids. It's madness for them to have to go through. It's not right. It's detrimental to their mental health, how it's affecting them and their school, because they keep getting challenged about, well, how do you feel about this? Well, how do you feel about that? What's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on that? And it's like, I'm not ashamed to say, like, we're pro-Israel in my house. I mean,
hell yeah, I am too.
We're pro-Israel on this. They're the ones that got attacked.
Absolutely.
So I just leave it at that. I don't go into all these details and all. I know there's more history behind it and all that stuff. But my kids, like, man, they have to be quiet about that stuff. It's cool. That's not, and they're
That's
not even
right.
Jewish. Now imagine if you were Jewish, how you would feel, right?
Right.
These folks talk about all this anti-racism and all that. Well, apparently anti-Semitism isn't part of the social justice.
It's not, right.
Apparently it's not. Apparently it's okay. You can be anti-racist to everybody except the Jews. And I see that's the hypocrisy that I call out. Yeah. And that's the radicalism I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
It's what did I put it? It's the other people.
Yeah.
Was my term. Yeah. No, the other people. No, and them, because it's like it applies here, except when it's the other people. Like, okay, so it's for your convenience is what you're saying. Right. Okay.
It also shows ignorance. They don't know what the hell. It's like the flavor du jour, right? The flavor of the month. Oh, to this month it's Palestine. What's going to be next month? Oh, let's move on.
Exactly.
Yeah. I watched this great show, and you would like it, Flindt, because it's built around a country club called Red Oak on Amazon. And one of the main characters, she is like a flavor of the week with everything. And then her boyfriend calls her out, and she's like, "Well, I just want to fit in." And it really is that. That's I just want to fit in. Okay, what did they say over there? Good, I'll adopt those. At 45, I'm really good at going, I have no effing opinion on a subject at all. I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't spent any time. not these topics we're discussing, but topics in general. Like, I don't care. I don't need to be a part of your discussion on this.
Well, and at 68, we just don't give a shit. We've got our opinion, and that's what it is.
No, I mean, that's a great point. It's like the whole thing to fit in. And so there's the social justice movement has all these different boxes that you check of things that they support underneath it. One of them is decolonialization, anti-racism, which is fine, wage inequality, capitalism, all those things. And harm reduction is one of those boxes too, just so you know. That's one of the boxes that's in there. So that's something that you just need to be aware of, man, because I don't think you and I are both necessarily opposed to harm reduction. I just think we're opposed to radical interpretations of harm reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I put it in pretty simple terms. Short-term harm reduction saves lives. Long-term harm reduction keeps people trapped.
That's a great way to look at it. But the harm, and then underneath the harm reduction, there's like little subsets, like a 1A and a 1B of decriminalization and
Right.
safe supply and supervised consumption side.
And that's what people aren't seeing.
That's right.
In my opinion, that's what people aren't seeing.
Just so you know, like that's one of the things on their list, man. And so, it doesn't mean we have to stand up and say down on harm reduction. No one should be saying that, because the reality is if you're reducing harm, it's probably better than nothing. But where's the recovery? Where's the hope of recovery? Where's the promise of recovery? Why has recovery been taken out of their language? When you go to the National Harm Reduction Coalition's website, why do they no longer talk about sobriety and abstinence and recovery like it's no longer part of their vocabulary? That's a huge mistake. And we need to make sure that they reinsert that or get out of the way.
Yep. Yeah, Flindt and I, our last episode, we did a one-on-one because we really wanted to break down from dancesafe.org. We got one of the fentanyl test strip kits.
Talk about people with purple hair all over.
I mean, well, hey, I got red hair, so I can't say anything.
Hey, mine's silver, but it's natural.
Right? How can you be a wolf and a silver fox all at the same time? Right?
There's silver wolves out there, man. So
absolutely, there are.
That's right. I mean, we went through this thing that in the rhetoric, and it's like you gotta almost have a PhD to interpret a lot of it. But we went through all of it in their kit and everything else, and understanding and preventing overdose and all this. At no point in there does it say, and if you are worried that you may be an addict, here's some resources.
Right.
In any of this stuff, ever, all the stuff we get.
Gives you a six-page step on how to test your drugs. All right. By the way, like I said in the episode, tell me one addict that's going to test an entire pill that they only have one pill, right? That ain't happening. But it's a 4-step process to try to test it.
Right. And that's because that's not their job. That's what they'll tell you. Their job isn't recovery. Their job is to just show you how to test your drugs. Just like the supervised consumption site. Our job isn't to promote recovery. Our job is to help you use your drugs safely.
Yeah.
They compartmentalize everything on purpose so that they don't have to talk about treatment and recovery as one of their contingencies to getting funding. I'm being honest, like that's 100% exactly what's happening. Okay. So Sam Rivera, he runs the On Point safe consumption sites in New York City, the 2 that are operating in New York City right now illegally, but have been sanctioned by the city and the state. They're open right now, right? Mm-hmm. He said, I watched him do an interview in person, and he said that, we don't mention recovery or treatment to anybody when they come in and use drugs here. No judgment. We don't offer it. We don't talk to them about that. But when they ask us, we'll act. We'll pick up the phone. We'll call the detox van. But we won't ever talk to them about treatment or recovery, ever. And I just thought that that's just fundamentally, to me, it's fundamentally wrong.
Absolutely it is.
That you would run a site where people can come in and have a respite from the street, right? And use your drugs under observation, not medical observation, just observation. And have someone standing by with an oxygen tank, right? And they won't ever talk to you about drug treatment unless that person says, you know what, man, I think today's the day. Then they'll be like, okay, great, let me call. But no one will sit there and say, hey, man, have you thought maybe, this is the 36th time you've used our site and you've OD'd 3 times since you've been here. You think maybe you want to think about going to detox and treatment today? Nope, that conversation never happens, and they admitted it. So just understand, like, that's not their goal, and that's the issue that I have, is that recovery is no longer the goal of some of these more radicalized harm reduction folks. And they freely admit it now. They're not even hiding it anymore. So I think it's important that we challenge it and bring that message of recovery back to the forefront in
Absolutely.
our policy,
Yeah.
in our criminal justice, for everything. It has to be, the word recovery needs to be in all the stuff
You bet.
Yeah.
going forward.
Couldn't
Yeah.
agree more with that, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, why can't you include in this anything like, we highly recommend, due to 80% of all illicit drugs having fentanyl in it, that you don't use, but in the event none of it, there's none of this. Anyways,
You go on ESPN, you watch ESPN watching football, and they have the commercials to go bet on the games on your phone now. Even at the bottom says gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not on anything. They don't have any of that. I don't understand why the state doesn't step in, because that's a state thing or a federal thing that they make them do that. Why don't they do that?
By the way, and those are nonprofits. Those are nonprofits. What again, I don't even know if this is correct, but you would think that there would be some sort of oversight for nonprofits and not making those statements, not making that suggestion. If you're thinking about recovery, here's a number. I don't know. I'm with you all the way on it, Tom.
I don't know. I mean, it's too simple of a thing to ask for.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
It's just, but if they're contracting with a city, or getting their money from a city or a county to do business, to do that kind of work, or from a hospital to do that kind of work that then gets money from the government for it, that should be a requirement.
You bet.
Yeah.
You ready for treatment? Call this number. It can be something as simple as that. I'll take it. Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. I'll take it. They have it on Budweiser commercials. Drink responsibly.
Right.
Yeah.
How come on these things with these nonprofits, it's like enjoy your high instead?
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
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 I want to end on the word safe. I have such a problem with it. And the parallel I made for Flindt was, I had a really great, what do they call it? Human behavior, sex ed teacher in high school. And he goes, yeah, condoms, birth control, all this. And he goes, that way you understand you need to be responsible in having safer sex. There's no such thing as safe sex. I'm tired of the word safe drug use. There's no such thing.
There isn't.
Not with alcohol, not with any other substance. There is nothing safe here.
Right.
If you take too many Advil, you get liver damage.
Correct.
I mean, so I mean, honestly, right? You take too much Alka-Seltzer, you can have a heart attack. I mean, you have to, you drink too much coffee, you could have a heart attack.
I mean, look at the warnings just on a prescription bottle that you got from the pharmacy. There's 16 pages, with words that you can't read. Okay, on all the dangers, and if this happens to you, here's what you got to do.
Yeah, may cause blindness, may cause you to grow a tentacle. It's like.
Right.
So the argument then is for us to have the safer. They've changed the word now. They've changed it from safe supply. Like in Canada, they give out hydromorphone now on the street to people to try to replace the heroin in Vancouver. They call it, instead of safe supply, because of that very thing, Jason, they've changed it to safer supply. That's the term that they use now to try to get around that, because they got called out by a bunch of doctors on that too, saying, actually, those aren't safe either. Dilaudid's not safe either.
No, none of it is.
No, it's not safe. So So it's just, they're playing word games and trying to change the meanings and moving the goalposts. And so it's very important for us, all of us in this space, to stay vigilant.
Yep.
And watch for the changes. I probably do a little too much on here. I really am into it on social media, but someone needs to stand up to this madness.
No.
Yeah, Tom, and seriously, whenever there's any type of those those conventions, those talks, wherever it is, and if we can be of assistance to you at any point, please let us know, because I know what it's like going to Sacramento and not having bodies there, okay, that are in support of what we are doing. And if you need that support somewhere, our ass will show up to support you. We don't have to be neck deep involved, but we'd like to be, but we'll show up, because we also have to show force here. I think there's some part of that, that these people need to see the numbers of people that are preaching what we're preaching.
Yeah.
I think that's ultimately, I mean, I think it's extremely important for that.
Yeah, if you just want a 6'2" guy that looks good in a suit stand behind you, hey, you know how to get a hold of me.
If you want to go somewhere where you feel right at home, the last 2 years in a row, I've gone to Calgary in Canada. Every year they have something called the Recovery Capital Conference. And it's a 2-day conference, about 2,000 people that basically think like we do. And it's
what time of year is it in?
It's in April. This next year in April in Calgary. So it's probably still kind of snowy in Calgary, but it's a 2-day event. It's about 2,000 people, and they talk about recovery systems of care the whole time.
Great.
You get big time people that go up there and speak. Schellenberger spoke a couple of years ago. You got Dr. Keith Humphreys from Stanford. You get big people. They get big people to come up there and talk, and it might be worth the investment for you guys to go check it out. I've gone the last 2 years, and it's just cool because then you start building relationships with people in other cities. And you start finding out that you're not alone. And it's not just a California thing. They've got issues up in Calgary, Alberta too.
Yeah, they do.
And then you meet people from Minnesota. And then now I've been to Denver a couple of times this year because it grew out of that. And now we're moving the needle in Denver. And so the idea is to keep going east, right? At least with my movement, to keep going east.
Yeah, when you get that info, just send it to us or we can check it out too. But absolutely.
Yeah. It's just worthy to check out. So then, you have a place to go where you have friends also,
right.
Instead of always being like the minority in the room, like the minority dissident view in the room when you have all these people talking about harm reduction or whatever. So yeah, it feels kind of good. Gives you hope.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised top quality care with programs for detox and patient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living support groups, and more. New Perceptions North provides adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect in a safe, comfortable environment to begin the process of recovery to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction. Call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
Boy, where do we start? I guess I'm going to go with this area because it's something that Flint's been doing as far as when it comes to policy solutions and really getting the powers that be, so to speak, to understand this thing called addiction and where they're falling incredibly short.
Right. Wow. Well, that's a big topic to cover. And, a lot of our problems lie in policy. And what we don't understand is, so nobody knows about drug policy, right? They just kind of hear this term harm reduction, or they hear this term recovery. They don't really know everything that goes into that. They don't understand the intersectionality between drug policy, criminal justice reform, housing policy, homeless policy, and how it all kind of works together or doesn't work together in our case in California. Now everyone's kind of asking those questions. And so we're kind of at an exciting time right now, really in the Western US, because the narrative and the tide is starting to turn towards more pragmatic solutions around addressing the crisis that we're seeing unfolding in our communities. It's not just San Francisco, but it's Fresno, it's Sacramento, it's Portland, Oregon, it's Seattle, Washington, Los Angeles, Denver, Colorado, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Phoenix. You've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are struggling with homelessness, and about 8 out of every 10 of them seem to be struggling with addiction or untreated mental illness. And at the same time, you have this massive influx of this new drug, relatively new, illicit fentanyl, right? Or fentanyl, which is, which the cartels have figured out how to manufacture in a clandestine lab and mass produce it and smuggle it into the United States. And now, whereas 5 years ago when I was using heroin, it would cost $10 to buy 1/8 of a gram. You can buy 1/10 of a gram of fentanyl, which is 50 to 100 times stronger for $10 on the street.
Right.
So it's completely changed the drug market, the people selling the drugs, and it's just killing a bunch of people that really should still be here with us, that we could actually save if we actually promoted treatment and recovery and also included some accountability in that. And I've said it from the beginning that accountability is a cornerstone of recovery. It's not the cornerstone, but it is one of the cornerstones of recovery. And we've systematically removed that from our policies in the state and across really the Western US, and you kind of see what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to mention one thing, because you said something that, by the way, everything you said was right on the money, makes perfect sense. But when I look at addiction, and again, look, I'm a recovering opiate addict of 23 years. There's and without sounding arrogant, there's not much I don't know about opiate addiction, because I did it all, like yourself. Okay,
Right.
yeah, but I'm going to go with this for a second. I actually think, and I think it might even have to be split up into two categories here, because we have the homelessness issue. We've got the crime issue that is associated with homelessness. And then we have addicts that are not homeless, that are, maybe in the forefront of their addiction, maybe in the middle of their addiction. They haven't reached that level. And by the way, not every addict reaches homelessness and turns to crime. Of course, I did a number of small things, criminally, but nothing that was going to get me put away for 20 years. Well, maybe. And but I think that almost has to be addressed as well, because, and what I mean by that is, like yourself, trying to get people to understand addiction. Nobody's just understanding addiction, what it does to the brain, what it does to our bodies, and all that entails. And so how do we even begin to fix anything until the powers that be understand that? How do we get that message to insurance companies? How do we get people the length of time that's needed for treatment? Because we all know this is not a 30-day deal at all. We all know it's got to be 6 months, 9 months, a year. And sometimes it takes 2 to 4 years before this stuff can even before our brains can even turn around and begin to feel normal again. So again, I just thought I would throw that one out there. Do you think? Oh God, do you think we need to we need to explain this into two different sections like that?
Well, I think, yeah. So you bring up a great point. So it's a lot of it's about education, but it's also about who's telling the politicians and who's telling the policymakers what it is we should be doing.
There it is.
You hear this term thrown around a lot, evidence-based, right? When we talk about our drug policy. And then you hear this movement, there's this growing movement alongside of that actually wants to reclassify addiction as not being a disease of the mind, not being a brain disease, but just being a condition that someone can manage and live with, like it's like you have eczema or something like that. And that's not what this is. This is a disease of the brain. It's something that happens when you become addicted to a substance as strong as opioids or opiates. It actually implants itself in your very basic survival instincts, the same place that food and sex and fighting to survive are placed. So it becomes that much of a priority, so that, and if you just look at the history of addiction, alcoholism, all those things, you see over and over and over again, people choosing their addiction over the things they love the most, choosing it over their family, choosing it over their friends, over their job, over their livelihood. And so that voice, or those voices that talk about addiction in that way, have been pushed to the back burner over the last decade or so, and been replaced with this kind of harm reduction approach, which I'm not against harm reduction. There's aspects of harm reduction that do need to be implemented in our drug policy, but there's this kind of more radical harm reduction that gets pushed, downplaying all of that, downplaying the harms that addiction causes to not just the individual, but to the community, to their families and to the communities. And we become so focused on the user that we're not taking a step back and looking at what it does to the community, about harms to the community. Yeah. Right. And now, there's some new voices that are rising up. I'm one of those voices. There are other voices that are in recovery that have decided to step up, put their recovery out in public so people can see it. So we've tossed the anonymity thing. That's just my own personal choice to do that because I see what's happening and it's wrong. We are enabling people. I mean, I don't care how you want to say it. We're making it so easy for someone to use drugs right now and become addicted to drugs that there's really not a lot of incentive for anyone to get clean. I mean, look, you used heroin, I used heroin. You don't just wake up one morning and be like, oh man, I think today is a good day to go to rehab.
Right.
No, it's more like, I think today is a good day to go into my wife's purse to see how much money I can take out of it so I can go buy dope. Let's be, we have to be honest about that, right? So there has to be some incentives. And if we don't want to use law enforcement as that incentive, okay, that's fine. Well, then you better replace that infrastructure with an infrastructure that does incentivize people to get clean and to get help. And we have failed to do that. Oh, yes. And now you see this crisis that's just completely, it's like a forest fire out of control.
Yeah.
And we don't have the tools to fight it.
Yeah, that's been one of my biggest things that Flindt knows I get incredibly fired up over. It literally pisses me off to no extent because the reality is, a lot of people, and I know they think they're doing the right thing or they want to tell themselves, but you're just leaving people out there to die. That's it. Just plain and simple. If we're not giving them an alternative, yes, we could all agree the best thing would be sober. So let's take the drugs away, but you're not giving them anywhere else to go and anything to do.
So, there's a term that you hear thrown around a lot by proponents, people that support safe injection sites. But, you can't recover if you're dead. You hear that all the time.
All the time.
Okay. So my answer to them is that, well, you can't recover if there's no place for you to go to recover either.
Right.
Yep.
So if you want to do one thing, you better do another. So if you want to have your safe injection sites, well, you better invest and build a full continuum of care that starts with treatment on demand, detox, residential treatment, transitional housing that's recovery based. And then if you want to stick safe injection sites in there somewhere, we can have that conversation. Look, they talk about Portugal all the time, right? They keep using Portugal as this example. Oh, they decriminalized drugs in 2001, et cetera. Did you know that they decriminalized drugs in 2001, that Portugal didn't open a safe injection site until 2019?
Yeah.
Yep.
So they went 18 years between decriminalization and opening a safe injection site. And in between, they built 63 therapeutic communities throughout their country to actually support treatment and give people a place to go to recover.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That to me, like, if you want to follow the Portugal model, let's go. We can have safe injection sites in 18 years, and in between, let's build a bunch of therapeutic communities in California and give people an opportunity to get their lives back.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top-quality care with programs for detox, inpatient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living, support groups, and more. With 50-plus years of combined experience and sobriety, Flindt Andersen and Thelma Gatlin Wilson provide adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, and a safe, comfortable environment. To begin the process of recovery, to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction, call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
Okay, so Tom, look, what you just said, I agree with everything, 110%. Thank you, by the way, because half the time we feel like we're the only ones here trying to get this message out, to be honest with you, but it starts as small as county-run programs answering their phones. They don't even answer their phones. So you and I both know, Jason knows as well, but if we're seeking treatment, and I don't care what the reason is, we're out of dope. Whatever it is, we make that phone call. If we don't get somebody to talk to in about 30 seconds, our ass is down the road. And these county-run programs, they don't, especially after 5 o'clock, nothing gets answered. There's 17 prompts. There's voicemails everywhere that directs you back to another county. It's just a nightmare with this stuff. Now, some programs will not even take people from Thursday to Sunday. They'll take a Monday through Thursday evening, but Thursday evening through Sunday, nothing. I own a private treatment center. Our phones are answered 24/7. And if we can't get you into our place, we're going to try to get you into another place, because that's the type of people that we are. We're not going to let you hang out there with your ass hanging out there with no options anywhere.
Right.
Right. So again, and we're working with a local assemblyman here, Jim Patterson, who we just adore this man, and he's all in this. And we're trying to just get some conversations going with people in Sacramento about this, because I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. They're not asking the right questions, and they're not asking the right people, which is us.
That's right. And, there's been a little bit of movement in Sacramento, but not nearly enough. You understand how the state assembly is and the state Senate. They're, overwhelmingly Democrat run, which is fine. I'm a Democrat, but they're like overwhelmingly progressive, and they're really hell bent on decriminalization.
Mm-hmm.
They blocked several bills in the state Senate Public Safety Committee and the Assembly Public Safety Committee about holding fentanyl dealers accountable. Right. And they're focusing on all these other things. Well, what they really need to be focusing on is how are we going to fund and build a bunch of treatment centers and add thousands of beds to what's already out there, and more importantly, how are we going to staff them? Because these you're right, these treatment centers and your county's Department of Public Health, et cetera, they keep worse than bankers' hours.
They do.
It's not even 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. It's 8 to 1.
Yeah.
If the nurse practitioner shows up to do your intake at all. We have a couple of methadone clinics in San Francisco, and one of them was under scrutiny earlier this year because it was found out that they were turning away clients that would come in to get induced on their methadone that were referred from the hospital, et cetera. They would show up and be like, "Oh, we can't take you today," and turn them out to the street. And then they come back out to the street, and they turn around and there's 10 drug dealers standing right there willing to sell them for $5. That's not fair.
No,
and that's not recovery. And when you think about the budgets that our counties have for their public health departments and their behavioral health departments, you have to start questioning, like, where's that money going? For example, in San Francisco, our Department of Public Health has a $596 million annual budget just for behavioral health. And you got to start asking, look, we only have, with all that money, we only have 57 detox beds in a city with a population of 850,000 people, where there's at least 25,000 drug users, right? Yep. And you only have about 275 actual residential treatment beds that are sanctioned by the Department of Public Health, because the rest of those beds, like Delancey Street and some beds at the Salvation Army and the Father Alfred Center, are abstinence-based, so they're not considered evidence-based, which is insane to me, because the bottom line is that we need beds. We need places where people can go. We need the staff to staff them appropriately, so that we can have a real place and a real incentive for someone to say, look, okay, I'm ready. And when they say, yes, I'm ready, boom, we have a spot for you. And that's starting in San Francisco. I'm working with the Salvation Army here in San Francisco. We started an initiative called The Way Out, which is the first treatment on demand program in San Francisco, maybe since the 1990s, where you call a number and you can be in a detox bed the same day, and we'll deal with all your paperwork after that. But we're going to get you into that bed first.
Nice.
That is a great model to follow. What you're doing at Fresno, that's a great model to follow. And we need to get more than, we need to find a champion in Sacramento that's willing to take up this banner of recovery and march it forward. And just because of politics, that champion's probably going to have to, it's going to have to be bipartisan. You're going to have a Democrat that's going to be bought into that with Assemblyman Patterson, et cetera, so you can move this forward.
Right. Let me ask you this. When I know Delancey Street, they've been around forever, but some of the county programs, do they detox medically?
Yeah, so they all do.
Okay.
And then here's the reality is with fentanyl. Look, I'm a supporter of Matt. That's where harm reduction and I we meet. We diverge in other areas, but we meet there. And that's because when I finally got arrested for my 6th time, and I went to county jail, they I was in deep withdrawal from the heroin and fentanyl because I was already moving over to fentanyl, and they gave me Suboxone in jail, and that really it helped. It worked.
Absolutely.
And I did it for 5 days, and I haven't touched a drug or a drink since. And so I think that can be effective. And I think that that's, any detox that you have, actually, I think it's state law now that you actually have to have, if you want to be licensed as a detox, you have to offer a MAT in your program. And that's smart because fentanyl is a different beast than heroin.
It is.
You can't kick it cold turkey. You need help.
Right. Well, you don't even want to kick heroin cold turkey. You don't want to kick Vicodin cold turkey. You don't want to kick any opioid cold turkey. And so again, I see the term MAT. Okay, how I'm seeing it everywhere. Sure, our detox center, we detox with Suboxone and a myriad of other medications that our doctor prescribes for our clients. And I am a firm believer in that Suboxone should not be used for more than 2 weeks in any detox, and it's a taper from there to get them off. Look, if somewhere down the road, if they want to go back on it, then I can't make that call for that person. I just don't agree with it because my philosophy is what's wrong with abstinence. Because every time we use, whether it's Suboxone or methadone, they're still narcotics. They're still synthetic opioids, and we're still giving a narcotic to a narcotic addict. And so again, are there some people out there that are never going to be able to get off of this stuff? Yes, there are. But why are we giving it to a 25-year-old? Why are we strapping a 25-year-old to? And as well as I was on methadone for 2 years. All right. And I had to get off of it myself because the last thing they wanted to do is take me off of it. And I finally walked in there one day after I got that thing down to where there was no pink in the bottle. Right. And I walked in there and said, you can take your box and your methadone, you can shove it up your ass. I said, because I'm out of here.
And the withdrawals from methadone are awful. And the withdrawals from Suboxone are awful.
Horrible.
There's no question.
Right.
Yeah. So, I probably don't have quite as strong a feeling about it as you. I'm probably more I'm more flexible with that.
Sure.
I'm a big believer in just getting someone to pursue recovery to begin with, because we're not doing anything to do that right now. It's like we're literally starting from scratch, especially in San Francisco, where there's just no reason for anyone to get clean. I mean, if you have $5 right now in San Francisco, you can buy fentanyl on the street.
Oh yeah.
$5. And it's like, so, and no one's going to bother you. Cops aren't going to arrest you. Right. No one's going to mess with you. So why would you get clean?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Those circumstances. So I'm willing to kind of start all the way back at the beginning just to get someone on that road. And then we can talk about options after that. But I'm with you, man. Look, I'm abstinent. I'm 5 years abstinent. And my life has never been better. There's nothing wrong with abstinence. Abstinence should be the goal. And abstinence used to be the goal of harm reduction. That's what kills me. Is that one of the original goals of harm reduction was to keep you alive in the hopes that you find the miracle of recovery.
Yeah. Yep.
Somewhere along the line, that got twisted up.
Yep.
So now it's just about supporting drug users, period.
Correct.
Yep. And that's not harm reduction, man. That's enabling. So call it what you want, but that's what I call it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm going to say this one last thing on methadone and Suboxone. At the minimum, we should be able to tell these people what the potential harm is with those two medications, what the potential long-term health costs can be with those, because there are many. You've got sleep disorder. You've got bowel issues. You've got potential cardiac issues with this. You have psychotic episodes with methadone. I had them all with it. Okay, all four of those I had. And so again, I just want people in. Oh, by the way, let's inform you also, by the way, that if you leave out of town and you forget your methadone, you can't walk into another methadone clinic in another town and get your dose for the day, or if you went to Hawaii or Washington, D.C. or wherever it is. So let's be professional about it. Let's get them the right information so that person has all the information to make that choice. Right.
Agreed. Totally agree.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, at 559-579-1551, or visit us online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Pain Nonprofit. And please subscribe to the Don't Hide the Scars podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. And if you would like to donate to Pain, Parents and Addicts in Need, please click the link in the description to make your tax-deductible donation today and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
Methadone is, I've seen the long-term effects of people on methadone. You see a lot of people in San Francisco that are hunched over, walking around like bent over, kind of like the whatever.
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, that guy, right? And I talked to a bunch of them on the street, and they've all been on methadone for 20 years, 15 years, and like they're sober, right? But they're on methadone and they're all hunched over, and it's like there's all these side effects that come along with it, stenosis, all these things that people don't know about that give you these long-term effects. And so I agree with you. So and this is the thing about fentanyl that's kind of changed the game. So if you were a heroin addict, you could go 30 years on heroin and live, right? You could use methadone for 30 years and live, right? You could use Suboxone for 30 years and live. You'd have other health problems, but you'd be alive. But fentanyl, you last in about 2 years once you start using it, and then it's lights out.
Right,
it's really lights out. That's one of the biggest things I try to impress upon elected leaders and local officials, politicians, is that we've got about a 2-year window for a human being that's addicted to fentanyl, especially if they're on the street, to try to help them. After that, it's probably too late.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and our very own Pam Smith here, who lost her son to an accidental overdose. I mean, how many of this is where it's the kid off at college and he's feeling all the pressure, and somebody said, hey, Xanax is a pretty cool thing to take away that anxiety, and they do the order over Snapchat, and what do they get? A pill laced or primarily or totally fentanyl, and they're gone first time.
I'm proud to say that I stand with those parents. I was in Sacramento 2 weeks ago, standing with Matt Capialudo and the drug-induced homicide folks, and they filed a ballot measure to put Alexandra's Law on the ballot.
Sure.
And I was proud to stand with them at their press conference. And I know many of those parents that have struggled with that, the Didiers and Jaime Puerta, and a lot of those parents that have gone through that. And that's one of the most frustrating things to me, is that you've got dealers that are deliberately selling a drug marketed as something else that has fentanyl in it, and people are dying from it, and then nothing happens to that dealer because the war on drugs has failed. Dude, that's at the least, that's manslaughter.
At least.
If not murder. And so, I'm sorry. It's like, you're going to do that kind of crime, you got to do that kind of time. And those guys need to be held accountable, and we need to send a message that this will no longer be tolerated in our community and in the state of California. So I fully support increasing penalties for fentanyl dealers. Again, fentanyl is a completely different beast, and it's completely changed the game.
Yeah, it has. In fact, when we were up there the last time, I've been up there numerous times, and as our own Pam Smith here was telling her story about this, her son, I'm sitting there in the Public Health and Safety Committee, and two things happened. There was Assemblywoman Bonta, who looked over at Pam and said, and I quote, "Oh, Ms. Smith, we grieve with you, but is it really going to do any good to put that drug dealer in jail?" And she might as well have punched Pam right in the teeth. And then Assemblyman, I can't remember, he's from Santa Monica. Anyway, he says, wow, he goes, I just can't believe that every drug dealer is lacing every pill with fentanyl. And I wanted to stand up and say, how stupid are you? Are you, sir, are you not even paying attention to anything that is going on here? Look, that is, and then Bonta wanted to turn it into a race issue. And again, what I wanted to say was, okay, Miss Bonta, you're African American. You have African American children. If an African American drug dealer knowingly sold your child a fentanyl laced oxy or a fentanyl laced Xanax, you wouldn't want that person in prison?
Yeah,
of course you would.
Yeah, I know. It's foul. I'm sorry, it is. I completely reject that kind of thinking. Look, if you're a bartender in a bar and you started putting cyanide in someone's drinks on purpose, shouldn't that bartender go to prison?
Great analogy.
So what's the difference if the drug dealer knows that the stuff he's selling has fentanyl in it, and then he actually sells it as Xanax? Shouldn't he go to prison?
Yeah.
And they're like, does it, look, there's something to be said for victims' rights, and there's something to be said about justice.
Right.
Like, look, I don't care if another dealer replaces that guy. That guy isn't going to be out there selling drugs again to another unsuspecting kid and killing them.
Mm-hmm.
And that, it's for me, it's a moral issue too.
You bet.
I think it's immoral not to hold those guys accountable. It's like, look, we are a nation of laws, and without those laws, we will fall into anarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that we have to be hardcore with everything. If you want to reform the criminal justice system, knock yourself out, but you better actually build the infrastructure first to support those changes before you just go off and start making all these laws that decriminalize everything. Because I'll tell you what, here's an interesting stat that I use, and people don't think about this, but since 2015, the state of California has reduced the prison population by 70,000 people. In that same time, from 2015 to now, the homeless population in California grew by 70,000 people, almost exactly the same number, right? 70,000. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to prove a causation between the two, but there's absolutely a correlation. Why? Because someone gets out of prison, you release them with $50 and a bus ticket to the county that you were paroled to, and you get there and there's maybe a halfway house where you get to live for 90 days, and then after that, you're on your own. How many of those guys ended up on the street or reoffending, selling drugs or overdosing, all of those things, right? Because there was no infrastructure to support them, right? So this whole thing to me is kind of hypocritical, and they're just doing it almost like out of guilt rather than actually doing it based in logic. And it's really frustrating.
That's what I say all the time. It's just all this stuff is just masking your BS guilt.
Yeah. Yeah. There was something else you said. Oh, when it comes to, we talk about this quite often because we deal with a lot of young people here. And again, we're not dealing with young people that are out on the street. We're dealing with young people that still live with mom and dad. They're still going to school. They're still, they're still being kids, but idiot ones. But what's happening and what we're seeing here is when I hear the term accidental overdose anymore, Tom, a lot of this is not accidental anymore. But when a parent loses a child, and again, God bless them, I will never put myself in their position. I've spent countless hours with numerous parents that have lost kids to this. They seem to go towards, yes, my son or my daughter died of an accidental overdose, when in fact, a lot of these kids are buying fentanyl intentionally. We have the kids to prove it. We have the kids that say it. We have the kids that are selling it, that are saying, no, Flindt, we've got kids that are sitting out under our sign out here at Blackstone and Shaw that says one pill can kill, and they're using fentanyl under the sign and flipping off the sign at the same time. Mm-hmm. The accidental overdose piece of this, at least in my opinion, was a year ago and beyond. Now, I'm not saying there's no more accidental overdoses, because I think a lot of what happens is that's that casual drug user on a Friday or Saturday night that went to go buy, maybe an 8-ball of cocaine or something, and they don't have a fentanyl test strip. And they use the cocaine thinking it's cocaine, and they wind up dead. Or it is that kid that, really didn't understand. Yeah, I think that's a Percocet. I'm going to take that.
Yep.
But we cannot hide the fact that kids are using fentanyl intentionally.
Yep.
We had one kid here in town that literally wanted to be the Pablo Escobar of the fentanyl drug trade. And he was damn near there at 18 years of age. Yeah. Scary stuff.
It's super scary stuff. And, again, it's just, when people seek out to look, I did my share of experimenting when I was young too. I did cocaine and dropped some acid, and this was the 80s, right? Smoking weed and all that stuff. And, I didn't fall into addiction until I was in my 40s. So it's kind of funny. I had a break in between. I had a family and a career and all those things, right? But, back then, like, we always wanted to seek out the best stuff, right? So it's like, oh man, my friend Tim, he found a guy that could give me an 8-ball and it's supposed to be really pure, and so we'd go and buy it, right? It's the same thing with fentanyl. Yeah. It's like people that were, experimenting with heroin or maybe popping an oxycodone pill, and they're like, oh man, I heard about this new drug fentanyl and it's 50 times stronger. Well, let's go try that because I'm young and I'm invincible and I don't care, right? And what's funny about that is that kind of mentality translates actually to the street for people that are experiencing homelessness, but in a much, much sadder kind of way. So when I was homeless on the street in 2018, I didn't want to die, but I didn't care if I did.
Didn't care, right?
Yeah, I didn't care. So, and I'd given up all hope, and that's kind of how it translates, right? So it's like you just kind of give up, and you're like, screw it. If I die, I die. I don't want to die, but if I die, I die. But I got to have this because my addiction is telling me that I got to have this. And those poor kids that are out there under that sign using fentanyl right now, they're hooked. Yeah. And if they're not hooked, they will be. And once they're hooked, that's it. You can't function on fentanyl. You can't be a functioning addict on fentanyl. Right. Like even when I was, when I was using oxycodone, when I was buying pills off the street, and I was using 560 milligrams of oxycodone a day, believe it or not, I could still kind of function. Right. But once I switched over to heroin and fentanyl, I couldn't function anymore, and I lost everything. Right. So all those other drugs prior have been cut out. It's like fentanyl cut out the middleman. You just go straight to the hard stuff now, right? Right. And, they're using this fent, and that's it. You're done, and before you know it, you will be on the street, or you will be dead.
Oh yeah, and there's no question. Because I was going to ask you this. There were times when I prayed for death. Because I was taking the last 2.5 years of my use, and I was taking between 70 and 80 Vicodin every day. Oh. And it was and of course in those days it was so easy to doctor shop. I had 13 different offices going at one time. But you're right. I didn't care if I died. Didn't want to. Had a family and all that sort of stuff. But I'd pray for it. Yeah. People don't and that's the other part of it, that these people don't understand what the addict is going through. And I'm not saying we need every break in the world here, okay? But it's gonna take some time for people to come back from all of this stuff.
It is, and it's going to take placing. It's going to take. Look, the way I say it is there's a subset of people on the street that require intervention. So law enforcement's going to have to play a role. There's going to be some folks that are going to have to be placed in a controlled environment in order to detox and start their journey into recovery. And the thing that's really frustrating for me is that the harm reduction folks talk about this need for safe injection sites everywhere. It's going to save lives. It's going to save lives. And regardless of how you feel about that, my position on that is that, so they think that that's going to save lives. And then you go look at a city like Vancouver, which has 13 safe injection sites. And they just broke their records for overdose deaths in Vancouver. So it's clearly not saving lives. That's bullshit. It's not.
Right.
What we have to do is we have to have interdiction, which means the cops have to go out there, the DEA has to go out there, the U.S. Marshals have to go out there, and we have to make it harder to get high. And at the same time, we have to make it easier to get treatment. That's not a new idea, okay? Yeah, but it's an idea that we threw out with the baby. We threw the baby out with the bathwater. We threw it all out, and we replaced it with just use safely. In 2020, the Department of Public Health in San Francisco ran an ad campaign called No Overdose, KNOW overdose. And it had images of like these homeless dudes sitting on a street, sticking a needle in their arm, smiling. Like it was fun. Right. And what's funny is I knew some of the people in those pictures because I used to hang out with them on the street. One of those guys is in prison right now for murder, right? And one of the other people in the picture was a well-known drug dealer on the street. So I'm like, they didn't even do their homework, and they wasted $2 million.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, of course.
On this ridiculous campaign, right? And through our advocacy, we got all those ads taken down, and they admitted that they made a mistake, right? Because that's the message, and that's the message our government, our public health department is sending to people. Use with friends, don't use alone. But it's okay. I'm homeless, but I'm shooting pills in my vein. It's all good.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell him that one. Tell him that one because he's going to die.
I forget who it was, but it was a
dancesafe.org.
Yeah, it was try smoking it instead of snorting or injecting.
Yeah.
It's like, are you
boofing? You want to boof it? We'll show you how to boof it, bro. You know what that is, right? Doing it up your butt. So come on.
Right. Yeah. It's like, hey, look, I don't want anyone to get hepatitis or HIV either.
Sure.
But I'd also prefer that they don't die. And let alone when you're talking about these safe injection sites. Oh, by the way, when are they open?
8 to 5. What is the addict going to use that? Not use after 5 and not before 8 a.m.
The mistake they're making is that they glamorize the whole damn thing, and they're normalizing it too. And this is a problem that we have in this country. The United States has a love affair with drugs.
Yeah,
no question about it. We've been glamorizing drugs since the 80s. I remember listening to Motley Crue in the 80s talking about cocaine and all that stuff. Right? You know, so it's not like Miami Vice, right? All the cocaine, all the cartels, and all that. So it's been glamorized, right? Yeah. And you listen to a lot of music today. They still talk about using drugs, but I'm starting to notice more and more artists talking about getting sober.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there now.
Right, a lot of them out there. And so, it's like we have to learn things the hard way in this country for whatever reason. And what's sad is that with fentanyl is it's not giving us time to learn. It's just killing us.
Correct.
They just released updated numbers for the last 12 months in the United States. 110,000 people died of drug overdose in the U.S.
Right.
To give you some perspective, in 2013, 10 years ago, it was 17,000 people.
Right.
So we've lost it's almost grown by a factor of 10.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're sitting here screwing around with our drug policy, and our national drug policy is a decade behind. They're still screwing around with pills. Right. They haven't even gotten to dealing with the fentanyl yet.
Right.
And then we got these radical harm reductionists on the left that are trying to legalize it and trying to bring a safe supply, which there's no such thing of fentanyl unless you're in a hospital under medical supervision because you had to have open heart surgery.
Right.
There's no such thing as safe supply of fentanyl. That's a lie.
That's a lie. Yeah.
And they're trying to give us safe injection sites, but they don't want to pay for any treatment. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sorry, it doesn't.
I always question, like the ad campaign you were mentioning, like, okay, what politician's cousin owned the company that produced those, that they spent the $2 million in the ad agency? And, so much of the stuff it gets down to that following of the money. And, to piggyback off what you were just talking about, as far as what our potential overdose death rate is going to be from 2022, 2023, the numbers add up to essentially like a 747 crashing every day. And you don't think the gosh damn government would respond really quick if that was happening and take a look at our flight control issues and everything else? They would, but they're not. And I'm one of those people who's like, they just don't care.
It's amazing to me that, look, more people died of drug overdose last year in the United States than died from gun violence and car accidents combined. Okay, combined.
Yeah.
The same people that support decriminalization of drugs also support full-on prohibition of guns. Make that one make sense.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And more people are dying from the drugs that they're trying to decriminalize than from the guns that they are trying to prohibit. And what's even more hypocritical about all that is that they say that, prohibition has caused all of this and the war on drugs failed, but you want to prohibit firearms, or what? You're going to start prohibiting cars because they kill people? Is that next? I mean, I don't get it. It's like their priorities are so screwed up around drugs because someone told them, and it's our own fault too. The government screwed up in the 90s. They were maybe over draconian in what they did with the crime bill and all that, and going after crack.
Right.
But someone convinced them along the way that, we just need to let people do what they want and body autonomy and all that. And this whole idea of dying with your rights on, I'm sorry, if you're out on the street and you've got abscesses all over your body and you have sepsis, but you won't do anything about it because you got to dose your fentanyl every 2 hours. So you got to stay close to your dealer on the street.
Right.
You should be intervened upon.
Absolutely.
Someone needs to come and take you away and get you medical help and start helping you. But the ACLU, I'm sorry to say it. Look, again, I'm a Democrat, but I'm just going to say the ACLU and the harm reduction folks are like, nope, can't do it. You're violating that person's civil liberties.
Yeah.
And so they leave them out there to die. And that is really unforgivable. And that's immoral and it's un-American. I'm sorry, it is.
Yeah, no, it is. And Jason and I earlier were talking about, some of the advocates out there that are actually doing more I'm talking about the best way to put this, part-time advocates. This is the topic of the century now. So everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon here instead of guys like us that are in this thing every single day and have been in it for, you for 5 years, me for 15 years, Jason for his 4 or 5 years he's been in it, and then they're passing messages along. Look, I'm a Narcan advocate. There's no question about it. I think everybody needs to have it. It needs to be in every school room, just not every school. It needs to be in cabs. It needs to be in buses. It needs to be everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. But it is not a treatment tool.
No.
And neither is fentanyl test strips.
No.
Those are not treatment tools. And people are out there talking about it like they are.
No.
Right?
No.
And it's just, God, no, keep your mouth shut. Don't be telling people things that you don't know anything about, but because you know somebody that maybe some kid did become addicted to it, you think or you joined some band of somebody. I don't give a shit. It makes me so mad that these people think, or like the one guy that was on TikTok the other day that says, you have to be comfortable in a sober living environment to start your recovery. This guy doesn't know shit, and these people out there are listening to this guy going, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. You tell enough people your opinion and enough people see it, then it starts to become the truth. Yeah. That's the kind of downside of social media, right? Right. Even though social media is a great tool for people like me, yep. That just all I do is tell the truth. I barely even offer my opinion. Here. I just tell the truth, man. This is what it is.
Because I don't give a damn anymore, Tom. I mean, right? We either tell the truth or let's get out of the business.
Let's get out of the business. So look, they talk about rigorous honesty in recovery, right? So and sometimes the truth hurts, man, but you got to say it.
Gotta say it. Yep.
So look, I'm going to ask you guys a question. What happens when you overdose and you get Narcan and you get brought back? What happens to that person after?
Actually, it wipes out all the opioid in your system and you are well on your way to withdrawal symptoms.
Correct.
And nowhere to go.
Right. So my question is they talk about, we reversed this many overdoses here, that many overdoses there. What was the intervention after the overdose reversal?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Zero. Let me tell you something. So what we've done here, I have it. Like I said, I have a treatment center. We are licensed to detox on an outpatient basis with Suboxone. We have gone to hospitals and said, we will get an office right across the street from your emergency room. And we will set it up. If that person wants the help, we will come and get them. If they fall within the protocol of it's that time to be able to start the detox with Suboxone, we'll do it. We'll do it. It's been a year and a half and not even a response yet.
Oh, man. Is that because of politics?
I think I think maybe, but I also think that maybe it has a little bit to do with the mentality of just the system in general. It's slow moving. Everything is slow moving. I don't think they're against it. Yeah. It's just, I just want to say, get off your ass and do it. What do you have to do other than make a phone call to us?
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, everybody's complaining about how we're at crisis levels, but what's interesting is that all these different service providers, including first responders and hospitals, nobody talks to each other. Everybody seems to be operating in silos, right? There's really crappy tracking, medical tracking. So this is one thing that they do right in Canada and this is because they have universal health care, however you feel about that. But when you walk into it, like if you go to Calgary, Alberta, which is a little bit more of a conservative province than Vancouver and British Columbia is, you walk into their safe injection site in downtown Calgary and you have to swipe your medical card. And so your identity comes up and your entire medical history comes up on that screen. And nice. Wherever you go to access any type of medical type of service in all of Canada, you swipe that card, anybody from any provider can see your full history, see what kind of drugs you've been on. You get an idea of how long they've been homeless, what illicit drugs they're using, what else they've been diagnosed with, all of those things. And if we really want to make inroads into this, I know this sounds silly, but we need to like work on our data and work on our tracking and make it better. We can't have this stuff of where like the way the activists run a safe injection site, you walk in and you can just say your name's John Doe and you can go over there and shoot dope. Right. We need a little bit more information from you. Like, how long have you been using? How old are you? How long have you been homeless? What other medical diagnoses do you have? What other drugs are you taking that can interact with the drug that we're about to supervise you using? All those things, right? But they don't want to do it. Right. They don't, because they're activists, right? And now we're violating your civil liberties. It's insane to me that they want to run those kinds of sites as an activist operation instead of a clinical operation with doctors and nurses.
Exactly.
And they lie and they say that, oh yeah, we're running them as a medical operation. Bullshit. There's no nurse there. There's no doctor. Right. Let's be real, and that's why I get so mad at what the guys are doing in New York. They have those 2 supervised injection sites open over there. They're running them as activist operations. Right. There's no medical stuff there. Where's the health? They say, well, you have access to health services. Bro, I'm coming in there to shoot fentanyl. Right. Yeah. I don't want anything from you except leave me alone so I can shoot my dope. Right? That's it. Right? Look, if I don't mean to go off on it, but if I was on the street and I shot up and you came up to me and said, hey, man, can I get you into treatment? I'd be like, bro, F you, man. I sit here and enjoy my high. Leave me alone.
Right, you buzzkill. What are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing? So we got to be honest about this stuff. And people don't want to be honest. Doctors don't understand because they're in their offices all day. Right. Activists don't understand because they read this shit in a book instead of actually getting out there and getting their hands dirty, right? And the ones that have lived it, that support that kind of stuff, they know better. Yeah. They actually know better. And all these radical harm reduction folks that are in recovery, if you ask them, how did you get clean? They almost all have the same story. Well, finally I got locked up for the 10th time. Oh, wow, that's my story too. Hey, how about that? Yeah. So it just makes me kind of wonder, like why are they so against accountability when that's the main reason why they're enjoying their sobriety today.
Yeah, I question the damn agenda. I just have to. It's like, exactly what worked for you? Abstinence. Like, why are you trying to? And I'm not saying there's not different pathways to it, because there is. But why are you sitting and completely ever allowing that as an option? Or first, let's try this option. It's baffling.
Mind-boggling.
What the freaking agenda is of individuals.
I'm going to share this with you really quick. Look, I had a conversation with the CEO of the largest addiction treatment provider in San Francisco. She told me, and I quote, there are 17 million people struggling with addiction in the United States, and none of them want to get clean. So we should just support them, unquote. And the thing that kills me about her is that she is a recovering heroin addict that has been clean for 30 years.
No.
She's clean and abstinent and enjoys abstinence. And she had the nerve to look me in the eye and tell me that. And I just think that that's foul. I'm sorry. It is. It's very hard for me to hear that.
Yeah, that's hard for me to hear too, to be honest with you.
And I wonder sometimes, because I was listening to Dr. Drew Pinsky talk about it, who's a doctor, but he's also a board certified addiction medicine specialist. And he said the biggest, and quoting him, fucking hold up for people like me is the lawyers that keep the buffering between me talking to the right people. He's one of those people that knows you want help. You want a guy like you, Tom, like Flindt, like a Dr. Drew that really knows, gets us, and has done this forever.
Yeah. And, and he doesn't make any I've met Dr. Drew a couple of times, and he's honest about it. He's like, look, we do need a healthcare approach to this, right? Yeah. As you hear the harm reduction folks say, I admit it. Yeah, we do. And we should. And that's the thing that's lacking that we all agree on.
Right.
There's not enough treatment. There's not enough detox beds. They're not using medically assisted treatment as effective as they could be.
Correct.
But at the same time, there's no accountability. There's a desire to move away from enforcement. There's a desire to move away from enforcement of cartels that are trafficking and selling drugs on the street. And it's like one doesn't work without the other. And so when you put your finger on that scale and you tip it to the public health approach and take away resources from the law enforcement stuff, all of that just kind of falls over on the other like an avalanche. And the public health approach all of a sudden isn't working. And if it was working, overdose deaths would be down. But they're not only up, they're way up, right? Despite the millions that we're spending across the state on all the stuff. And why is that? Because we're not actually spending the money in the right place. We're not building out treatment beds. We're not funding, we stopped funding rescue missions. While some of their methods might be kind of old fashioned, they're still beds.
Right.
We need somewhere where someone can go, and they don't even have that. We stopped funding faith-based organizations to a large degree unless they capitulate to the harm reduction model. We stopped funding organizations like the Union Rescue Mission in LA, which houses over 1,000 homeless families and individuals every single night with one condition. And that condition is that you have to be sober to be there. And you can stay there for free. We stopped funding all of that stuff, and we're wasting our money on handing out foil, straws, pipes. It doesn't make any sense. Like needles, I'm cool. I get that. Bloodborne diseases. You can't sit here and tell me that there's any harm reduction in using a foil and a straw, especially when we're talking about fentanyl, which is so strong that it cuts through all those body absorption rates that they talk about when you shoot intravenously versus smoking. And it's just as dangerous as if you stuck a needle in your vein. I just don't care.
Yeah. I mean, I just absolutely agree with you. I don't, I'm getting to the point where I was telling Jason earlier, I don't know if we're even going to see much change in my lifetime, and that's frightening. When I hear kids say two things, when I hear them say after they've used fentanyl, I've seen God, and listen to this one, and I never want to not feel like this again.
That's a huge problem.
That's a huge problem.
Humongous problem.
You bet.
So I remember the first time I hit 30 milligrams of roxycodone, man. I remember I was sitting in a park and I thought like all my problems were gone, man. Best, dude, it was a couple weeks after surgery, I'm sitting there chilling in my boot and I'm like, yeah, life is good, And I spent 5 years chasing that high again. And I never found it until I used fentanyl. When I hit fentanyl off a foil, that was the last time that I ever felt that same high. Right. And I just remember waking up 2 hours later in a doorway on the street. And I was lucky, I guess, that I woke up.
Yeah. Yeah, you were.
That's a very big, that's a really big problem to have, because again, once you get hooked on that, man, it's like, there's no going back.
No, there isn't. It's and it's hard to explain to somebody what that feeling is like, and what even still scares me to this day. I've had 35 surgeries in the course of my life. And so, my opioid receptors have been changed since day one, but I have to have a foot surgery October 26th.
Oh man. Don't do it, man. That's what got me addicted. Don't do it. I'm just kidding.
No, I got to do it because I play golf and my golf game's being affected now. So, but my wife and I, we have a plan for everything. I mean, it's my doctors know. My wife is one of those that she will. I don't even know. They may give me like 10 pills or something, and she will be standing there with a cup after 44 years of marriage. She's going to be standing there with a cup, and if she even thinks that I have finagled more pills somewhere, she's going to say, pee in the cup, because if I ever pee dirty again, my ass is out. I mean, she will never, ever, ever go through what she went through before. And I don't blame her, but it still scares me a little bit. But something, Tom, at the same time, when I walk into that hospital room and they put that, the get ready to start the IV and they put the alcohol prep pad on there.
Yeah.
My first response is, I'm home.
Yeah. I feel you, man.
You get it. That's scary stuff.
So, I'm a sepsis survivor. I gave myself sepsis from missing when I was shooting dope, right? Mm-hmm. And I almost lost my right hand. I had an abscess open up on my forearm, and all the fluid moved into my hand under the skin, and my hand swelled up like a balloon. And I still have the scars on my arm. They had to cut me open and drain it. They said I filled up half a bedpan with fluid.
Oh.
And I woke up in the ICU. I was intubated. I had a tube down my throat, a breathing tube. And you would have thought that was that would have been enough,
Right.
It wasn't.
I
just switched to smoking. Right. And so as I was recovering from sepsis, I'm still smoking heroin and popping dilaudid because they gave me dilaudid for the pain.
Sure. Breakthrough pain.
I was like, wow, this is the highest I've been in a really long time, even though you have bandages all over, abscesses and, you know, almost died from sepsis and all that. It's amazing the stuff that the human body can endure, but it's also amazing how strong addiction is and how it can endure.
Right. And that's what these guys don't understand up there. They don't understand that in 2000 I have open heart surgery, and I've got and I've got my kids coming into the room and turning around and walking out because of what I look like and what I did to the family, you know, and it still took me another year, all right, before the light bulb went on, so to speak. You know, and the people that are running the show, they don't get that. They don't, when I talk to people about not understanding addiction, that's what they don't understand.
Yep.
And they need to.
It's kind of like homeless activists that talk about homelessness, but you know, it's because they went to college and they studied, you know, sociology. And so they read a bunch of stuff in a book, and that's cool. You know, you can go make policy or be an academic. That's cool. I talk to a lot of academics and a lot of people with letters after their name. I have respect for them. They play an important role with forming policy around housing and drugs and all that. But it's only now, in the last couple of years, where the voices of people with lived experience are starting to rise up, and they're actually listening to us, and we're speaking out, and we're pushing back on these failed narratives, and they're failed. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that we're doing around. Look, you have to think about, in California, we actually changed the law in 2016. We rewrote the Welfare and Institutions Code to say that any funding for permanent supportive housing had to be under the Housing First model. So if you wanted to run let's say a transitional housing facility that was sober, you couldn't get any funding from the state from it unless you got like some special grant that you had to apply for and all that stuff. Those are things like we have to change, that I'm working on as part of my advocacy to try to change. Because we need to recognize that, wow, ever since we've made all these changes around 2016 that seemed altruistic at the time and seemed like they were going to work out in the time, fentanyl came in and just took all that shit and threw it out the window.
Yep.
And it completely changed the game, and you can add meth into that too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So now between fentanyl and meth, it's like, man, no, you're going to have to start taking some people, intervening with people on the street, and some people that, especially the ones breaking the law to support their addiction, are going to have to be held accountable. Yeah. And some of them have to be mandated into treatment. It is what it is. We need to start up our drug courts again.
Yeah.
I know Fresno still does it, but San Francisco, our drug court's all outpatient treatment. How's that going to work if you're homeless? Outpatient treatment.
And again, that's a whole nother show, is talking about people going to outpatient first. I mean,
I'm with you on that,
right
man.
there. Yeah. Right there is what I want to do. Okay. I mean, my God.
My outpatient was going down to Golden Gate and Hyde and scoring some Fent. You know, I'm outpatient, bro. I'm good.
That's good Lord. Yeah. I mean, I'm primarily alcoholic, Tom, and I've had people ask me, like, did you go to rehab? I said, no. And I'm very fortunate that I didn't have any detox issues. But boy, if I had the shakes, like I've known some people that it's like, yeah, just sitting here hitting a 12-step meeting ain't going to work for you.
Yeah.
And I think they lump it all in like, well, I have a buddy who's an alcoholic and 12-step meetings work. Well, then you can just send them somewhere during the day. It's like, no, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It's not going to work.
Look, you know, however you find your path to recovery, I don't really care so long as you're making that effort. But I just feel like that we've underfunded and understaffed and underplayed the importance of residential treatment in all of this. Yep. And that's the biggest thing that's missing in all of this. It's like we just have decided that we're going to downplay addiction because of harm reduction. And we're going to just say that the problem here is that we don't have enough housing. Well, duh, we all kind of know that there's a housing shortage across the country, especially out here on the West Coast. But to take someone who's been homeless, that's homeless on the street, that's living in a tent, let's say for the last year, that's smoking fentanyl 8 times a day, and tell them, oh, hey, we're going to go put you in this hotel over here and wash your hands, check the box, we housed you. That's a death sentence for that person.
Yep.
Because now you've isolated a drug addict, which is the most dangerous thing you can do to a drug addict is isolate them.
Right.
With
Exactly.
A buddy of ours in Arizona said that the hotels they've done that with, they've just turned into a shooting gallery. That's all it's become. It's just he talked to one homeless person, said, yeah, now it's just easier for me to get my drugs because the guy's living 2 doors down from me.
Well, in San Francisco, they just released the overdose death numbers yesterday for August, and we had 84 people die of drug overdose in San Francisco County, right? 70% of them happened at a fixed address, and most of them inside permanent supportive housing. And one day in the month of August, 13 people died in one day of drug overdose in San Francisco.
And you said 70% were in a fixed housing or fixed address?
We're at a fixed address. And most of them were sprinkled throughout permanent supportive housing in San Francisco. So, when they talk about housing with wraparound services, you need to start questioning those wraparound services quick style, because the same thing's happening in LA. During the pandemic, 5% of everyone we put in a shelter-in-place hotel, a SIP hotel, died of drug overdose in San Francisco. These are stats that don't get shared, that we need to share. Right now in San Francisco, between 4 and 5% of everyone that gets placed in an SRO in San Francisco dies of drug overdose right now. That's not housing first, that's housing death. So they either need to beef up the services, the wraparound services, and I say that in quotation marks because I worked as a case manager in permanent supportive housing as my first job out of rehab. Man, there were 3 case managers for 105 people. How can we offer adequate wraparound services with that kind of ratio, right?
Right.
Some places only have 1 case manager for 60 people, and in an old hotel where the room is 180 square feet with no kitchen and no bathroom in the room. And they expect people to thrive in that environment and stabilize in that environment where everybody around you is shooting dope? I don't think so.
I just don't get it. I want to say this too, and I know we're going a little bit over time here, but a couple of things. When it comes to private treatment, one of the reasons why I really believe that we don't have enough is the restrictions, the licensing, the amount of red tape that we in the private sector have to go through in order to open a private treatment facility is beyond what anybody could even try to understand.
Yep.
I tell Jason, I wake up three mornings a week with a pit in my stomach, because of everything that's coming down the pike at us. Surprise. And again, this is all part of it, but, surprise inspections, which we don't really ever worry about, but I mean, to have a place that's not over the top, we're not overlooking the fucking beach. Okay. We're not horseback riding. We're not doing those things. It's a very nice facility. we got 20 some odd employees. You start looking at California payroll tax, you start looking at food, you start looking at mortgage, you start looking at doctor's fees, therapist fees, counselor's fees, just the regular staff, just the detox tech, and everything else that goes with it, the insurances and blah, blah, blah. It's like, whoa, how are we even going to get more private treatment centers? Because it's a chore. It takes millions of dollars to get one of these things started. And then the time frame that it takes for the state to come in to even do a walkthrough, to even give you your certification and all the sub-certifications you have to go along with it. My God, I mean, it's enough to drive you. We opened ours we started it in 19, then COVID hit. We still weren't open yet because we were still, adding to the thing and figuring things out. And so because COVID hit, that dragged us back a year and a half. You should have seen us trying to get the state. We couldn't get the state out to the place. They refused to come out. So it backed us. And by the way, that entire year and a half, the money train is rolling. The money train is rolling. And then to get insurances involved and the amount of time it takes to have an insurance, to be able to take insurances, PPOs. And by the way, the amount of time it takes to even get Medicare accepted, so we can take Medi-Cal rather, we're still working on it.
So what's funny about that? So two things about that. So one, glad you brought up the Medi-Cal thing, and Medicare, because that's become a big barrier for speeding up people, getting them into treatment. So right now in San Francisco, which, San Francisco is supposed to have treatment on demand since 2008. They passed the actual proposition, a ballot proposition, to order treatment on demand since 2008. And it's only now that the Salvation Army is even doing a pilot of it in 2023. And it had to be the Salvation Army that did it, not one of the other orgs out here doing it, which is, I think is cool. It's like a double-edged sword with the Medi-Cal, because the Medi-Cal's brought in a ton of revenue for a lot of these rehabs, which is great, because then it helps you expand and operate and gives you more beds and all that stuff. But then you also become beholden to Medi-Cal, and that you have to wait to get those approvals for your billing, approvals for your intakes, and that delays you bringing patients inside off the street. And then every day that you're delaying, there's a potential for someone to overdose and die that was maybe waiting for that bed.
Yep.
Which is really frustrating. So I would love to see the state try to streamline that. I think that that's still quite a ways off. And that leads me to the next big thing, is that people don't understand the timeframes. They don't understand the timeframes on permanent supportive housing, on housing the homeless. They don't understand the timeframes on drugs and rehab. So, they keep saying, well, we need to build all this housing. Did you know, LA was supposed to build 100,000 units in 5 years, starting in 2015. When the 5 years was up, they built 900 units of housing, right? With the money that this bond measure gave them, right? It takes years. There's people that have been on a waiting list in San Francisco for 3 years for permanent supportive housing. 3 years.
Wow.
It takes anywhere from 7 to 48 days to access a treatment bed in San Francisco. And they actually froze the intakes for their detox beds because they allegedly had a COVID outbreak, right? So actually for about 3 weeks, you couldn't even get a detox bed in San Francisco unless you went to the Salvation Army, because they're doing all their stuff privately, right? It's insane, the lack of resources that we're providing people, yet all these people go out here and virtue signal, and all day long with big platforms, bigger than mine, and sit there and they say all this crap about, well, housing is a human right and housing is healthcare. Okay, where's the damn housing then? Right? Where is it? Where's the housing for the homeless? Who's been in charge all this time? Right? When's the last Republican governor that we had in California? Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
2010. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, come on, who's been running the show? Where's the housing? It looks pretty hypocritical to me, right?
Doesn't it? Yeah.
And then they're like, well, let's just release everybody from jail, from prison. Oh, and we'll support them through the community. Well, what happened to the money for that?
Right.
Yeah.
Where's the supports in the community?
But here's a quick question for you, though. This is just kind of off the cuff, right? But where did all these people live before they became addicted or before they became homeless? Was there did you kind of see my point? They had to live somewhere. Where's their houses? Why can't those things be reused? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying.
So, I just came back from Portland. I was there last week. And Portland gives San Francisco, it might even be worse than San Francisco. The amount of people on the street, like downtown, is decimated. It's sad. It's heartbreaking to see it, because I remember 10 years ago when it was just gorgeous, and they have, they say, oh, well, housing is $2,000 a month up here. And I laugh because I'm like, an apartment in San Francisco is like $3,000 to $3,500. Right. You guys don't have a housing crisis like we have a housing crisis, yet your problem is as bad or worse than ours. So is it just housing, or is it housing plus addiction, plus untreated mental illness, plus trauma, all those things, right? And I'm sorry, but housing, even if housing fixed all of it, let's just say, wave a magic wand, that housing would fix all those problems. You still got to wait 3 years for it. So here's the 10. Make yourself comfortable.
There it is.
Yeah. Let's be real. Again, it's like people don't want to be honest. And so they virtue signal, and it's just really frustrating to me, because while they're doing all this virtue signaling, people are dying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People are dying of drug overdose. People that I know, I've lost 15 friends to drug overdose since I got clean. That's not okay.
That's not okay.
It's actually criminal that we're letting that happen, and then we don't even want to arrest the drug dealer.
Right.
We don't even want to put him in jail. He just killed somebody with his dope.
Right.
And man, Sorry,
We're all on the same.
don't
We're
get
all on
me
the same
started,
page.
man, because F-bombs will come out and I'll lose my composure and all that stuff, So
we're totally good with that.
We're totally good with that. Absolutely.
We lose our composure all the time.
I lose my shit 3 times a day. So there it is.
Man. It's one hypocrisy and one like another just ridiculousness on top of the other. And we're tired of it.
Yeah,
it's not, if you want to make it political, it's not the Republicans, it's the moderate Democrats. We've had enough.
Yeah.
We're like, screw this. And I'm sorry, progressive policy doesn't work without public safety.
Mm-hmm.
And watching someone die on the street while your kid walks by is not public safety.
Right.
In fact, that's why people feel unsafe in San Francisco, because you've got thousands of people walking around addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
Right. In various states of disrepair and suffering. And then dropping dead in front of you.
Exactly.
That's really the issue. We talk about crime. That's the issue. That's the root of the problem in cities like San Francisco. It's the dope, man. It's the dope.
It's the dope.
Well, and I know it firsthand. My youngest is a huge fan of symphonies, and there were going to be a Shostakovich performance. And Dad, the only place is in San Francisco. And I said, okay, but you do understand, the homeless situation there, the addiction situation. Completely changed her mind, because for her, when we see it in our small town where we live, she has a huge emotional reaction, because I've talked openly with my kids about why the majority of people are there. And just like, oh, I don't want to go after all. Mm-hmm. And it sucks, because I lived in San Francisco for a year. I went to San Francisco State. I had beautiful experiences, a Giants fan since I was a little kid. And I have no desire to take my children to create some of those similar memories.
Right.
Look, I'm very open with my kids about my addiction. They have especially my daughter, who's 16 now, she has very vivid memories of what life was like when I was using around them. And so I don't no bullshit with them. I tell them, there might be a few really gritty details that you don't have to tell,
sure.
But that my sponsor knows, right?
Right.
But they pretty much know the truth, right, of what's happening, and so that I think that helps them prepare, because then they're educated about drugs. So that, look, I know down the road you're going to drink, or you're probably going to smoke some weed or whatever drug you do. Just understand, what you're getting yourself into, so you can make better choices. I can't at a certain point, I won't be able to control what they do, right? So I just have to have faith that I did a good enough job in recovery of educating them on what not to do. So like, you're at a party and there's powder on the table. Well, don't snort a line, because there's a 60% chance it's laced with fentanyl right now.
Right.
Or if they hand you a pipe, don't hit it, because there's a 60% chance it's laced with fentanyl right now. Or if there's a pill and they hand it to you, there's an 8 in 10 chance that it's a fentanyl pill. Don't take, things like that they know. And both my kids carry Narcan in their backpack.
Good.
Because last year when I dropped my daughter commutes, I got her into a private school, right? I got lucky. She got a scholarship. So actually she did it. And that's recovery for us as a family. Right. Because we're a family in recovery. It's not just me, it's my wife and my kids. We all practice the same principles in recovery together, right? So she turned it around because of recovery. And she got into this private school, and she takes the train to go to school every day, all the way down the peninsula in Palo Alto.
Nice.
And I dropped her off at the train station in Millbrae, and there was a guy that had OD'd. He was lying there dead, and the sheriffs had just got there, and she just walked right by the dude. And I'm like, it sucks. My 16-year-old has to see a dead body. Yeah. This isn't a war zone. This is in Millbrae, California.
Right.
She shouldn't be seeing a dead homeless guy just lying there because he smokes some fentanyl. That's not
cool.
It's not cool, and it shouldn't become normalized. And I think that's the problem, is that we're allowing this because of certain voices that have told us that it's okay. We've allowed this to become normalized, and I don't think that we should. And I think that that's a terrible, terrible mistake. And I think it tugs at the fabric of our society that we allow that to become a normal thing. And it's very traumatizing. And my daughter was really affected by that. And after that, ever since then, she carries Narcan in her backpack, because you just never know.
Good for her.
Absolutely.
Good for you.
Mr. Andersen, anything else?
No, I don't. Tom, thank you, man. This was an absolute pleasure speaking the truth to another guy that speaks the truth. I mean, this is a beautiful thing right here. Man, I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you. I'm elated to know you. Seriously, it's congratulations on your recovery. That's first and foremost.
Thank you.
Because I know how hard that one is, man. But I'll tell you what. You know what? It's not going to keep us down, right? We're gonna keep fighting this fight. Jason knows the same thing. We're all going to keep fighting this fight here until I don't have any more breath in me.
Right.
And that's all we can do, because we've been given some grace, and it's time we take that and we spread that forward. Absolutely. Right. It's been my pleasure, my friend.
My pleasure. And recovery is a gift for all of us.
Yes, it is.
It's a true gift.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, guys. Let's stay in touch. Happy to do your show again in the future. If you want some more hot takes from me, I'm happy to do it.
Absolutely.
And I'll see you on the other side, man.
You got it, man. All right. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, at 559-579-1551, or visit us online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Pain Nonprofit. And please subscribe to the Don't Hide the Scars podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. And if you would like to donate to PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, please click the link in the description to make your tax-deductible donation today and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.